BAMS Fest this summer. That would be the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival, June 28th at Franklin Park. I'll also talk with its founder, Catherine T. Morris.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then one final dispatch from the Karen Reed courtroom as the prosecution and defense deliver their closing arguments today in the second trial for Karen Reed, accused of murdering her ex-boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. All that on BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Korva Coleman. Israel says it is continuing to strike targets deep inside Iran. The military strikes began overnight. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reports Israel says it's attempting to destroy an Iranian project to build a nuclear weapon.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel targeted Iran's main nuclear enrichment facility called Natanz, and Iran says that it did suffer damage. Both militaries also said that 3 top Iranian security chiefs were killed, including the Iranian military chief of staff, Mohammad Bagheri. That's a major blow to Iran's military chain of command, of course.
NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reporting. Last night, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. was not involved in these military strikes. President Trump is convening a meeting of his National Security Council this hour at the White House. Earlier today, Trump wrote online he had given Iran 60 days to make a deal on its nuclear program and that today is day 61. The U.S. was supposed to have more talks this weekend in Oman with Iranian officials about the nuclear program, but Iran says now it won't go. Israel has announced it is temporarily closing all of its diplomatic missions worldwide. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports this comes as its military operation continues against Iran.
Israel's foreign ministry announced the move in an official statement, with its embassies in Europe posting the statement on their websites. The statement read that as a result of this temporary closure of Israel's diplomatic missions worldwide, consular services will not be available to Israeli citizens abroad. It urged Israelis overseas to complete an online form updating their location. The statement also warned Israelis abroad to avoid displaying national symbols in public, refrain from posting identifiable information or travel plans on social media, and avoid attending events linked to Israel. This comes as Israel launched a large-scale strike on dozens of military targets in Iran. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
An immigrant wrongly deported from the United States to El Salvador months ago is due in court this hour in the U.S. The arraignment of Kilmar Abrego Garcia comes more than a month after the U.S. Supreme Court ordered President Trump to facilitate his return. From member station WPLN, Mariana Bacallao reports.
Prosecutors say that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang, and that for the past 11 years, he's been moving people without legal status from Texas to Maryland. Garcia's attorney has said he's skeptical of the charges, as his client's wrongful deportation has sparked criticism of the Trump administration's immigration policy. Garcia will be arraigned in Nashville because his charges stem from a 2022 traffic stop by the Tennessee Highway Patrol. For NPR News, I'm Mariana Bacallao in Nashville.
You're listening to NPR.
With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Craig Lamolt. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton is criticizing the Trump administration's deployment of military on American soil. Moulton says the president's use of Marines to respond to California protests is unlawful. He also took a swipe today at the Trump's military parade tomorrow, saying it's politicizing the armed forces and dangerous for our democracy.
This is all just a show for himself, for his birthday. We don't do military parades in our capital like you get in Russia, in North Korea.
Trump's military parade is scheduled for tomorrow evening in Washington, D.C. to honor the 250th birthday of the Army. It also falls on Trump's 79th birthday. Activists around the country have scheduled No Kings protests for tomorrow afternoon, including in Boston. The forecast suggests this string of gray weekends we've been seeing this spring will continue, with rain on deck again for Saturday. The gloomy weather is taking a toll on some businesses that benefit from sunshine, including Boston's famous duck boats. Duck Boat CEO Cindy Brown says they're not selling as many tickets as they'd like.
We have lost a lot of the gains that we had during school vacation and marathon weekend. As you know, that was a beautiful sunny day. So we had a little bit of a drop in the gains that we had made.
GBH meteorologist Dave Epstein says if the forecast holds, this will be the 13th straight weekend where we've gotten at least some rain. We have a mostly sunny day first, once things clear up a little bit today, with a high today in the mid to upper 70s, a chance of showers overnight, and again, maybe some showers on Saturday with a high in the low 60s. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Council for Interior Design Qualification, whose certified designers work to protect occupants through the design of code-compliant and accessible environments. Learn more at cidq.org/NPR.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio on GBH and NEPM. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan, thank you very much. We're live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
So tomorrow is No King's Day and the birthday of Donald Trump, who said recently he's not really feeling the kingly love.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved.
This coming from the man who governs by executive order, intimidating the media and threatening this to anyone who protests his big parade tomorrow.
By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest. But, you know, this is people that hate our country.
So according to Donald Trump, you're either a patriot or a traitor, depending on where you'll be tomorrow. We here at BPR are trying to make a more nuanced approach. That'll be a first. So we want to know, where will you be and what are your reasons for showing up or not tomorrow? It's not just the Trump parade tomorrow night. I didn't realize it was at night. 6:30 tomorrow night. The No Kings rallies, there's supposedly as many as 2,000 around the country. The various Pride events, we're going to talk to two of the organizers of the Pride events at 1 o'clock. And in Western Mass, if you attended last week's Pride parade, we want to hear from you how it went out there. So Pride, No Kings, the military parade in Washington on the 250th anniversary of the Army, plus Trump's 79th birthday. If you're going to any of them, we'd like to hear why and which one. And if you're not, we'd like to hear why as well. 877-301-8970. One of the things I wasn't aware of until last night in Boston, the No Kings and the Pride Parade are joining forces.
Yep.
And we'll talk to the organizers about that.
Starting
this
right
afternoon.
here at Trinity Church, right in the newly redone, or sort of newly redone, Copley Square.
And yeah, we're going to ask them about whether or not the attacks from almost every direction and the retreat on DEI is going to reduce attendance or swell it. They seem to think swell it. And the question is, how do people feel about the No Kings rallies around the country? Is there intimidation, particularly for undocumented people or people whose skin color is not the same as, well, I was going to say as the president, but nobody has that color skin actually. So, but you know what I mean. 877-301-8970 is the number.
I think people are kind of worked up about the whole situation between immigration, between the stuff in Gaza, between the protests out in L.A. I mean, I think there's
Meaning what? The numbers will be huge?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I could be wrong. I think so. I'm mortified to say I have a long-standing family event that has been planned for weeks at my house, so I can't go. I feel terrible. But
I'll represent you. I'm going as a journalist, not as a participant.
Yeah, well, that's what we go as. But normally I would
I know
be
you
there.
would.
But I can't. I'm furiously cleaning the house.
We have to be making
all
canopies
day,
tomorrow.
all night.
So
yep.
Exactly. Those appetizers take a lot of time. 877-301-8970. And if you don't or you're not going, how do you feel about whatever of tomorrow's activities you support at 877-301-8970? Let's start in Acton. Rebecca, you're on BPR with Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. How are you?
We're very
Fine,
well,
thanks.
Thanks for taking my call. So I am the spokesperson with Mass 5051, and we are one of the organizers for the No Kings rally that is happening in conjunction with Boston Pride tomorrow. Really excited to hear that you guys are talking about it. We think this is such an important issue for people to show up tomorrow in defiance of Trump's incredibly expensive military parade, and we're going to be uplifting the LGBTQ community that he is trying to erase.
Rebecca, I have a question for you that I was raising on the air. I was hoping you or somebody like you would call. I am a huge believer that the only way you win anything is with relentlessness. And I worry that tomorrow, even if it's huge around the country, as I mentioned, I'm reading on the nokings.org website, at least 2,000 rallies around the country. What's happening the next day and the next day and the next day, even if tomorrow is a huge success? What's the follow-up plan?
Yeah, I hear you. So I think people need to start getting tuned into the amount of protests and other sort of nonviolent resistance that's been happening. Our group runs 2 to 3 protests a month. We were just on Monday partnered with SEIU to support their rally against the ICE actions.
Oh, the thing
LA.
at City Hall. So, that was pretty impressive. Yeah.
Exactly. So there is resistance happening, but people need to, I would say, subscribe to our newsletter, get tuned in so you know when things are happening.
What's the web address for your newsletter?
So we're mass, mass50501.org.
Great.
And we also are running call cannons every Wednesday to reach directly out to legislators. So people are welcome to join us for those.
Great. Rebecca, thank you for your call. And by the way, if you're a peaceful demonstrator who's doing counter demonstrations at some of these rallies and want to talk about what you're doing and why, we'd love to hear from you as well. 301-8970.
I don't think we in the media cover these rallies enough. I said before, Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, she always covers, reports on the latest rallies that have happened all across the country. And I think, wow, I didn't hear about that. Wow, I didn't hear about that. We don't do a very good job on it.
How can you say that after the coverage of LA when they were acting like there were hundreds of thousands of protesters when there were 400?
You know why? The only reason there was a lot of coverage of LA was the controversy about the National Guard coming in and stuff. And we have our peaceful presentations. I mean, look at how little coverage the Women's March got the next day, like the biggest rally in the country. It barely made the front page. I mean, everybody's down there wearing their pussy hats, and you look at the next day and you think, gee.
You going to yell at me if I bring up what I brought when you said the same thing a few weeks ago?
What'd you say?
Who led the largest protest rally maybe in the history of the United States?
Of course. It always gets back to Jim.
Who would that be?
Okay. Was it Jim Browdy?
It was Jim Browdy. And how much coverage did it even get as we marched through the streets of Boston, 10,000 strong, saying, raise our taxes? How much coverage did it get?
You got outdone by Tiananmen Square.
One paragraph because, unfortunately, as Marjorie said, it happened on the same day as Tiananmen Square.
Well, it didn't happen with the women's rally. And look about the SEIU. Where was
that? That got great coverage on TV at City Hall. It got great. By the way, I generally agree with you. Rallies are not seen as important. You know what's really interesting, which we should mention?
If they're violent.
The major networks are not breaking away, at least so they say, from their regular programming Saturday night to cover the military parade in Washington. I'm sure the cable stations will cover them, but the main networks are not.
I'm interested in that, too, if people are going to watch the parade.
I'm going to watch
at
a parade. You're not going to watch to see what happens there?
I figure I'm obligated to because of my job. But I don't know if I were a regular citizen, if I would be watching the parade and get my blood pressure through the roof. Aaron from the Boston Public Library.
Hi, Aaron.
In the audience
Where are
somewhere.
you, Aaron? Where are you?
I'm actually in the main library because I don't want to give you feedback.
You sound fabulous.
But, my wife is sitting there. She can wave to you.
Okay.
Well, there she is. Hello. Hello.
Hi, Mrs. Aaron.
Hello.
Okay. So what's up, Aaron?
Go ahead, Aaron. What's going on?
Okay. Well, the point is, I always go to any rally that I can just to show solidarity with all the anti-Trump people. But I think that this one is particularly important because it's the first time we've had to go head-to-head with Trump to show some sense of, the balance between who's for him and who's against.
By the way, we got to let you go only because the connection's hard. What Aaron was basically saying is he thought this rally was particularly important. I think what his point was, and you can nod if I'm assuming you know what he's about to say. Oh, you couldn't hear it, but you know the guy. You live with him, right? So I figured you might know him. That it's to show sort of the comparative balance in those who support what Donald Trump's doing, particularly in places like California around the country, are nodding in agreement, and those who object to it. And thank you. By the way, I assume people know this. We're going to talk to somebody, Sue O'Connell, about this later. There was a ruling by a judge, Breyer, the brother of former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, saying that the actions by Donald Trump to call out the National Guard was both illegal and unconstitutional. And 3 hours later, a federal three-judge panel in an appellate court, just 3 hours later, as I said, 2 Trump judges, and I can't remember who nominated the third, put a stay on it until there's a hearing on Tuesday. So at least through Tuesday, Trump can continue to have the National Guard there, even though the mayor of LA and the governor doesn't want it. Aaron, thanks for your call.
Here's some text. Sisters and I going to protest in Chelmsford against all thing Trumpist. Michelle in Chester, Vermont. We will be protesting in Chester, Vermont with a sign reading, "He has no loyalty, thinks he's royalty." Gunning for blue, next is you. Then we have somebody complaining that Trump is an angry toddler. Jan in Canton says she's going to her 4th protest tomorrow. Always go to Boston. We'll go for sure. She says she's over 70. It's one place where I feel empowered with like-minded people who care about injustice. I align with Indivisible and Mass 50501. All sorts of people are going here that are texting us. Somebody says if you're not comfortable with protesting, you can drive by a small protest near you in your hometown, maybe toot the people that are out
Steve from Norwood, he
on
did.
the street. Yeah.
Can I say, we ordinarily, I think people know, we take calls in order, but if there's somebody out there who's flying or driving to D.C. for the military parade, we would love to hear from you. If you tell the call screener that, we will pop you up to the top of the list, and we'll take you next.
Here's Maureen from Londonderry, New Hampshire. Absolutely going to No Kings in New Hampshire, exercising my right to free speech. Why? The Constitution, habeas corpus, denial of civil rights, support for immigrants, POC, that's people of color, and LGBTQ. Too much money spent on parade, but I signed up. Federal cuts, she's very involved in all these things.
877-301-8970. Jean on the South Shore. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
You asked Jim, what are people going to do the day after, and the day after that,
Yep.
and the day after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally, I'm going to keep doing what I was doing the day before that, and the day before that, and the day before that, which is we're standing on the rotaries on 3A.
Great.
We're standing out at with signs in Marshfield and Rockland and Scituate and Duxbury and Cohasset and Weymouth. There are great numbers of people doing what's happening on Saturday, but doing it on a regular basis.
Fabulous. Glad to hear.
I'm doing it for every reason. I'm doing it because I still have the image of a man who would become president standing on a stage in front of cameras with a microphone, contorting himself to make fun of a disabled person.
The New York Times reporter.
Oh, God, yeah.
Remember
yeah,
it well.
that was horrible. So many of us thought that would eliminate him from winning.
So many thought there were a lot of eliminations.
And when he attacked John McCain,
Hey,
said he
Gene,
liked people who didn't lose and get caught.
Stay in touch with us. We're curious to know what kind of activities are happening down there. And thanks for sharing what you're doing. 877-301-8970.
Debbie in Brookline is quoting Elie Wiesel. I do not march to change their minds. I march in protest so they don't change me. Of course, he is a Holocaust survivor.
Indeed.
Yeah, or
Scott,
he was a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, here's somebody from
no longer with us.
Washington. Scott's in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Scott. Thank you.
How you doing, guys?
Good.
So I got a thought, which is to use our hazard lights. If everybody driving during this parade puts on hazard lights, it's the same as an upside-down flag. Maybe this is something that people can protest or at least show up without having to physically get out of their vehicles or their homes, using the hazard lights as a full protest.
How
know
wide?
that.
I hadn't heard that. Is that you and your friends, or is that like a widespread kind of thing down there?
No, the thought came to me when I saw somebody with hazard lights driving, and I thought, this is a good way to protest. Maybe this is something going forward that somebody else can start to organize, because people do all the time, and if they have the hazard lights on,
got it.
I don't think it's illegal.
Hey, Scott, I have a quick question for you. How shut down is Washington? We know that the airport is closing, I think, for 4 hours. How shut down is downtown Washington tomorrow?
We just got stuck on the highway, and now it drove us. I have ways taking me through the city to get around the traffic, but all of the fast lanes have been shut down, so everything is really condensed.
Scott, let us know next week how it went, and thank you for your creative thought. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Someone wants to know who's going to fill in for you, Jim, when ICE Senator Padilla's Jim to the ground.
By the way, the horror of that, and we'll discuss that a little later in the show too, the horror of what happened to Senator Padilla from California, I'm sure you've all read about it, which was that he went to a briefing by Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, and they say he never identified himself, and there's a recording that shows he did say he was a senator.
Yep.
He was actually ushered in by Secret Service or somebody, and he's dragged out, thrown on the ground, and handcuffed. United States Senator from California. And to defend it, which is not atypical, there's just this endless stream of lies about what he did and didn't do. And it's a pretty horrifying thing. And I looked this morning, I may have missed something. I couldn't find, well, you find the usual two Republicans. Susan Collins, to her credit. Lisa Murkowski, to her credit.
Two women.
Both said they were appalled. The other 51 Republicans in the Senate, I couldn't find one word saying this is now how a United States Senator of either party should be treated when all they're trying to do is ask a question of a cabinet member.
Yeah, and then she made that ridiculous remark. Oh, I won't say it now. We're going to
No, you can say it. Say it.
Well, she made this ridiculous remark about they're saving Los Angeles for socialism. I mean, obviously, once again, she didn't know what habeas corpus meant. She doesn't know what socialism means either. But it was a ridiculous thing to say. And when you see how they treated the senator, you think to yourself, why are they so violent? Why is it so brutal?
I can answer that.
What?
Because they have a constituency of one. They don't give a damn about the American people. They know that Donald Trump is going to see how they behave. How would Donald Trump want me to behave? As violently, as rudely, as abusively as possible. And that's what they did.
And transfer that to what might go on when someone is stopped on the street with their children there with them, and how they drag people out of cars and break windows and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, 877-301-8970 is our number. Peggy in the car. Hi, Peggy.
Hello, Peggy.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Yep. Long time listener, first time caller. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate both.
I time my errands so I can listen to you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Peggy.
Okay. Well, so what I wanted to say is that I was planning on going into Boston to march in a No Kings parade or protest, but I'm afraid of Proud Boys seated in the crowd to create havoc and chaos. And I feel intimidated enough that I'm going to stay in Waltham, where we're having our own No Kings Day on the Common from 11 to 12:30, because I feel safer there.
That's important and huge. I think regardless of the motivation, that's an important decision. And Peggy, thanks for sharing with us, and we really appreciate your first call, and we hope it's the first of many. Peggy, let us know how tomorrow goes for you. John in Warwick, as a veteran, I'm torn because I want to support the U.S. Army, but detest that Trump is hijacking the event for his own purposes. I spoke to a Marine this morning who we both know, and I think we should probably not identify who he is, and who said he was just in a place in Texas, I think Cleveland, Texas, which I never heard of, at a gathering of fellow Marines, I think last week. And it was a regular thing that a foundation pays for, the air flights, whatever. And a broad spectrum of Marines politically, from far right, he said, to far left. And he said even the most maggot up far right Marines were wildly unhappy with Trump having sent Marines to Los Angeles, which I thought was quite interesting.
Well, I heard someone say this morning, and that a lot of these guys, and they were veterans that talked about this too, we have the most powerful military in the world. They think we don't need to parade ourselves around. Other countries with less powerful militaries like to do that to show how big and tough they are, like Russia, which of course is not big and tough, as we learned in the Ukraine war, and that they think it's a ye doth protest too much sort of thing, almost embarrassing, and there's something weird about it with Trump too, his fascination.
It's a celebration of him.
Well, again, but it's his big, he's a big military guy, but 5 deferments with his bone spurs in Vietnam.
Would have loved to have served otherwise.
Yeah.
Let's go to Cheryl in Newton. Cheryl, welcome. Hi.
Hey, how are ya?
Hi. Good.
Hey, good. So I'm a senior minister at United Parish of Auburndale here in Newton.
Great.
And we've got a group of over 30 people who are going to be marching tomorrow in the parade carrying our No King signs. We're really fired up about it.
Where are you going? What location?
We will be in Boston.
Oh, great. We're glad you're doing it, and we'd love to hear from you after the fact, too. Text us, email us, tweet us, call us, whatever. Cheryl, thanks. Carol from England was just on the line, but she couldn't stay. She said people there plan to get together in solidarity at the American Embassy, so we'll try to give you a little bit of update on that on Monday, too.
Catherine from Jamaica Plain, my sweetheart and I are attending the No Kings Boston protest. We've been trying to go to as many of these events as we can, as well as the Tesla takedowns every Saturday from noon to 2 in front of the Tesla showroom on Boylston Street, right up the street. It is good to publicly make known our displeasure and distress at what is going on.
You know, we played a little bit before this sound from Trump, in which he said the other day that for those who want to protest, meaning at the military parade, the birthday parade, quote, they'll be met with very big force. When your favorite person, Carolyn Levitt, his spokesperson, was asked about this, and she said, does that mean, I mean, it means exactly what it means. Does that mean that peaceful protests will be met by very big force? And because most of us people can't answer any of these questions, her response to a reporter was, that's a really stupid question. And but it's frightening. And again, you're optimistic that the threats and behaviors of the administration is going to swell attendance at Pride, at No Kings tomorrow. I'm not 100% convinced that it's not going to.
You know what? One of the most hopeful
down.
things I saw this week is polls showing that people don't like what he's doing on the economy, obviously, and they don't like what he's doing on immigration either. And,
overwhelmingly.
And immigration was one of the big reasons he got elected. I think people wanted the border to be controlled. The border is controlled now, and I don't think they want to have mothers, 9-month pregnant women, arrested.
That's a Quinnipiac poll 2 days ago. You should check it out. It's pretty stunning.
Okay, we're talking about the demonstration Triple Threat this weekend with No Kings rallies around the country, pride parades in Boston, and Trump's personal pride parade down in D.C. Taking a quick break. More of your calls at 877-301-8970. When we return, you're listening to Boston Public Radio on GBH and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In Britain, knife crime has almost doubled in the past decade. Now experts, survivors, and lawmakers are gathering for a conference in London aimed at tackling the root causes and consequences of this kind of violence. I'm Carolyn Beelayer. We'll have that story and the day's top global headlines next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MIT Federal Credit Union. With a full range of financial services, their financial advisors are committed to helping members' money work for them. Membership's open to the public. More at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. And the International Institute of New England, celebrating 100 years of supporting Boston's immigrants through resettlement, education, employment support, and pathways to citizenship. IINE.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the weekend slate of big events. Pride, No Kings rallies. They're combining, actually, in Boston. Trump's birthday bash on the 250th anniversary of the Army. Give us a call or a text. Tell us if you're going to any of them. If you are, which ones and why. And if you're not, why? 877-301-8970 is our number to call or to text.
You know, Ruth from Brookline is talking about something we don't talk about much anymore because there's so many other things overtaking it. But she says this is her third protest. I upped my game from women's rights to choosing to wear a red Handmaid's Tale outfit, seeing all these women all dressed in red. And a lot of women do that about the abortion rights issue, as off the Handmaid's Tale, the Margaret Atwood novel, and also the TV series, talking about women who've lost their options to choose their own destiny. This reminds me of all the rights that were removed, and she's going to be there for the third time in a row protesting.
You know, speaking of rights removed, we know what happened to Roe, but you know that when the Southern Baptist Convention voted overwhelmingly to oppose same-sex marriage the other day and say that they urge Congress to do the same thing, or pardon me, they're hoping the Supreme Court will ultimately do the same thing on same-sex marriage that they did on Roe. That movement is percolating up too, needless to say, as unreal as it is. And by the way,
we're moving backwards. That's what we're doing. Going back to the 1950s.
Well, except let me say one thing. Support for same-sex marriage among Democrats and independents is actually up over the last few years, not surprisingly because of the sycophancy of many people in the Republican Party. There, the numbers are down about 10% because what Trump says, they do. And so still in the mid-40s, but it's in the high 70s for everybody else. Where do you want to go?
Dari in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Dari. Hello?
Hi.
I just wanted to switch to phone. So I have a couple of points. First, I have called my senators and my representatives in Congress about this clawback bill for NPR. I have left them a voicemail that I cannot function without you, and I need you, and especially you guys in particular, for my sanity. And I've doubled my donation that I would normally make, and will continue throughout the year.
Thank you.
I'm telling you that not for my own thanks, but and thank you for that. But I just want to encourage everyone who's listening, if they haven't already done that, to consider it if they can. And the second thing is, I am going to be protesting, and I am with Peggy in that it's I'm 70 years old, my first protest ever in my life.
No.
But
that is a great story, actually. That is a great story. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Derek. Go ahead.
That's okay. But, so it's time for action, and I will be continuing to as many weekends as I can to answer your question about what do we do the day after. I also would encourage people to, as I have, to continue boycotting Target, Walmart, and any other companies that they are aware of that are have folded under Donald Trump. And I will say that I've boycotted Amazon, but not 100%, because there are certain items in my panic shopping, by the way, there are certain items that I just can't get. I have to order through them. So my way of dealing with that is when I get the customer survey to, really praise, because they do a phenomenal customer service, in my opinion, praise the person who helped me, and Amazon as a machine that it is. But I always mention Jeff Bezos and how I've, boycotting them as much as I can by going to the manufacturers to get to purchase.
Hey, Dari,
items.
I got to interrupt you for a second. If you hadn't said in the middle, this is my first demonstration, I would have said, based on the rest of this call, that you've been to about 3,000 demonstrations. Why is this your first?
Well, it really shouldn't be, but I've been doing the postcard writing and other things that I felt, in donating to Democratic causes. But quite frankly, I'm so disgusted with the Democrats. I'm enraged with the Republicans. I'm disgusted with the Democrats. So I'm trying to just do what I can locally. I know I'll end up donating again, but my wounds have to heal first. I have to.
Dari, can I make you feel?
They really know what they're doing.
Can I make you feel a drop better without disclosing confidences? Margie and I were at an event last night where we bumped into Senator Markey, and he's just one member of 100. To say that he is working this defunding of Corporation for Public Broadcasting bill is an understatement. I don't know what the results are going to be, but this is not like a paper endorsement of what we and our wonderful colleagues do. So you might want to be in touch with his office and encourage him. Dari, that was a fabulous call, and I hope you call us again soon. And I hope tomorrow fulfills whatever expectations you have for it. Dari, thanks for the call.
Maybe remember I just said how Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, misunderstood socialism. This text just drives me crazy. Most Americans want the rich taxed more and that is socialism. That's from the texter.
Can I read a text that responds to your earlier? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to point out that,
sure.
that is not socialism. People may know, and this texter maybe doesn't know, that from World War II right through Ronald Reagan, the rich were taxed at a much higher rate. At some points, as high as 90%. It was the tax rate. Now it's in the mid-30s. And socialism is when the government owns the resources and the means of production, when there's not private ownership, and that's hardly where the United States is. So I just wanted to straighten you out, texter.
An anonymous texter said, this is a response to your thing about the press not adequately covering rallies. Unlike for earlier rallies, the media is widely reporting about the No Kings rallies tomorrow, the Washington Post, the New York Times, etc., hoping this means will be rally coverage and ultimately will be a turning point in widespread awareness and civic engagement. So there's one person's analysis of how the press is doing its job.
Laura in the car, thank you for calling.
15 seconds, Laura. Sorry.
Yes.
I can't believe anybody can support a very expensive birthday party for a dictator.
Well, boy, you did it in 4 seconds. Laura, thanks for the call. It is I assume everybody knows, it's the 250th anniversary of the Army and the 79th anniversary of the birth of Donald Trump.
Okay, thank you very much for your calls and texts. After this quick break, we're going to talk with disinformation scholar Joan Donovan, who's going to talk about all the misinformation out there, whether it's AI, fake videos, videos non-AI, which are fake videos, everything that we're seeing in the media, seeing online that we may believe and we probably shouldn't believe, and perhaps a little bit how we can discern what we should believe and not believe. You are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, we remember two giants in American music. Sly Stone, the unconventional frontman, singer, songwriter, and producer of Sly and the Family Stone, legendary for their fusion of psychedelic rock, soul, and jazz. And Brian Wilson, the genius behind the Beach Boys, who created the soundtrack for a 1960s youthful utopia. That and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Newbury Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newburycourt.org. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan, live from the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's once again time for our Friday media analysis segment, Press Play. With us for this week's edition is Joan Donovan. Joan's the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute and Boston University Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies. She's the author of the 2023 book, Meme Wars, The Untold Story, The Online Battles Upending Democracy in America. Formerly was the research director of the Harvard Kennedy School Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy. And most importantly, at least us, she's the co-creator of the beaver emoji. Joan, it is great to see you. Welcome as always.
Thanks for having me back.
We're thrilled.
Thank you very much for joining us. So how does what are we seeing that is disinformation out of Los Angeles? There seems to be quite a bit of it.
Oh, goodness. I've been texting with LA Times reporters all week, and it's been really hard to discern fact from fiction. And a lot of it has to do with the corrosive environment of social media. And in particular, I could tell you one story of a video that was shared by former or probably current actor James Woods that was then retweeted by Ted Cruz, and millions and millions of people saw it, and it was a video of burning LAPD cruisers. But it wasn't from the current protests, it was old footage. So in my line of work, that kind of move to recontextualize old videos or old images in order to incite more agitation and violence is pretty common. But unfortunately, where we generally see this kind of stuff is with war footage and claims by Russia that they're, owning Ukraine in some way. And so these images of violence, though, are really important for us to understand and unpack, because they do cause people to go out into the streets and act, whether it's in defense of their rights or if it's in defense of the police. And so you do, we're at this precipice right now, I believe, where we haven't really seen the goons that we saw in 2020 come out that are, vigilante style, like what happened in Kenosha with Kyle Rittenhouse bringing his own gun. And these are the things that I start to pay a lot of attention to, is that movement from the wires to the weeds. What's happening online sometimes is a bit of an incubator for then more violence in the form of vigilantes showing up. And so these are the kinds of things that I worry about.
You know why? There's a double worry. So many people we talk to about this just focus on AI stuff, which is terrifying. I'm going to talk to you about one AI thing that involved me the other day in a few minutes. But the example you're picking, this James Woods cruise thing, is low tech. I mean, it's not an AI kind of thing. So whether it's low tech or the highest of tech in the AI world, is this stuff preventable, or is the goal just to hope that people have the wherewithal to detect after the fact that this is not real?
I mean, this is, low-grade information warfare, right? These are what we call cheap fakes in my world, deceptively edited videos or videos that are made to seem as if they're occurring at a different time and place. And these are all part of, in this case, state propaganda. Right? They're trying to make it seem like in a war of optics that LA is burning from Santa Monica to Pasadena. And really the protests have been contained to a very small area. I used to live in LA for many years and very familiar with where the protests happen. These are streets in Los Angeles that often are where people protest. There's a couple of public parks, and but for the most part, the government buildings are located downtown, and that's where people go to demonstrate. And unfortunately, the tech companies are still in control. They're the ones actually producing the software that allows you to make these deep fakes. The software is different on every platform. So with X is in and of itself a propaganda machine, but Grok is one of the only generative AI tools that allows you to make pictures with people's faces that you upload, or to create facsimiles of things that are very realistic, whereas other platforms have a little bit more guardrails, and even Meta will insist on putting a watermark on these images and at least making it somewhat detectable that they were generated by AI. But right now, I mean, the point of these companies that are creating these tools is to get them in the hands of as many people as possible. And so there's no serious effort to curtail this.
Could you, speaking of the watermark thing, I guess where I was going was, if this is not going to happen in the immediate future, if congressional leaders called you on the phone and said, could you draft for me something that would make these kinds of things as unlikely as is humanly possible, could you draft something that would be constitutionally not weird?
I mean, it's the same thing like trying to legislate old school special effects in the movies, right? This is the same technology that allows, movies like Independence Day to, have aliens coming down to Earth and blowing up the White House, right? Yeah. And so on the one hand, there are free speech issues. The other thing they've built into these systems that I think are important for the audience to understand is, if you see a picture of major destruction and there's no gore, there's no blood, likely that's AI. So some of the things that AI doesn't allow you to generate, in some cases, with the commercial AI tools, things that are pornographic, things that are gory. And as a result of that, you can kind of make sense of something that seems uncanny.
We're talking to Joan Donovan.
So there was this Bob video. This was supposedly Bob, who was a National Guard soldier, and there was a video of him preparing to gas these protesters, which was fake. And TikTok took it down. Which
Bob doesn't exist, by the way.
No, it was totally fake. But there was a reference in the same story about this incident from Time about ex-users asking about the veracity of these posts, something called Grok.
Yeah.
Grok. So what's Grok and how accurate is it?
Grok is XAI, which is Musk's company. So Musk has a conglomeration of companies. XAI is one of them. Tesla is another company of Musk's. X, formerly known as Twitter. And so Grok is embedded in Twitter and draws data from Twitter in order to create either text or video or images. And so I'm not surprised to hear that, people are asking these AI technologies if things are real or not. And unfortunately, these technologies are trash in terms of accuracy. And so we're in for a world of hurt if we try to replace fact checkers with them. We need real reporting on the ground. And that's been the only antidote to a lot of this is follow reporters that are on the ground in LA, and you will get the most up-to-date and factual information.
Can I stay on that for a second? Because go ahead.
I was just going to say that there was one that picture that we saw that Governor Newsom in California showed of the National Guards men and women lying on the floor. Someone was claiming that was actually from Afghanistan in 2021, and that was widely viewed as well.
But what's unsatisfying to me, I have to say, is when I combine your Independence Day comment with what you just said about you got to go to good, responsible news outlets, most people don't have enough time to make dinner, much less watch a video and then panic and then say, well, maybe I should go and do some searching around the whatever newspaper you trust. So are you sort of saying the genie's out of the bottle and we're screwed, or...
I don't think we're screwed. I think we're going through a phase in which we're going to have to adapt and actually double down on human intelligence. And so that means, rewarding and paying reporters for good journalism and insisting on local media rising to the top of this. And so, we've got two things happening at once, which is one, if it bleeds, it leads. So you do have a lot of violence and unfortunately like a hyper fixation on things like the burning Waymo cars, for instance. Yeah. But at the same time, you realize, that's like one block at one time, and we're talking about days and days and days of protest. And so I think it's incumbent upon journalistic outlets to also start to make sure that as they're creating their stories, they're also telling readers or viewers how they're generating their information, what their sources are. And those kind of methodological tips help people discern a lot about what's disinformation and what is fact. And unfortunately, in the moment of protest, we're in a fog of war situation anyway. A lot of things happen, and we don't always know how to attribute them to the cause of, sort of righteous civil rights, or what you see later at night, which is straight up looting, right? And so we have to also think about what is the difference between people who are demonstrating for their rights and then others who are taking advantage of that moment.
I hope we can all appreciate the irony is after Joan is saying what we firmly, Marge and I both believe in the importance of local media, this discussion comes about 21 hours after the House of Representatives, by a vote of 214 and 212, decided to defund NPR and PBS, which obviously would not only have an impact here, have an impact where you work, WBUR, but particularly on small stations around the country that would probably cease to exist because such a huge percentage of their revenue comes from federal funding.
And that's, to me, is a disgrace. And who's going to suffer from that are places that already have news deserts, places that struggle to have independent media. And it's...
in many red states, as you know.
Red and blue states. And this is, what this comes down to is this is about power. right? Who has it and who doesn't, and how it's being flexed right now. And when you look at it in the constellation, not just of attacks on public media, but the attacks on public education, the attacks on the independence of the military, something big is happening. Even the lawsuits to cajole large law firms to sort of build these reserves of hours that they would then loan out to the president. All of these things are incredibly coercive, and I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, I'm not, a psychic, but when we look back to history and we start to make sense of the variables, it gets really scary that this feels like that the only way out of this is going to be more and more public resistance until such time that there's a vote.
So here's a clip, Joan, from a YouTube video posted by this channel called Police Q that was made in April, which posts videos about corrupt police officers. Here it is.
Instead of apologizing or admitting her mistake, the woman started a series of arguments that no one could understand. She was so confident that you would think you were watching a court in the middle of the street.
Okay.
That sounds like somebody
Very
I know.
Very familiar voice there. Of course, that would be Jim Browdy's voice, which somehow was stolen by Police Q.
So, the question on this, talked about this the other day. It sounds, everybody who knows me well, when I played it for him, said, why'd you agree to do that?
You?
My fear, and I know I hate to make it about me, but you're the expert.
Yeah, but
so my
do it.
fear is not that. My fear is tomorrow, my voice says you should rally and execute your senator if he doesn't agree on something. I would urge you to go steal everything you can from your local. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And our lawyers are involved here at GBH, and we thank them. But is this another hopeless cause?
It's not hopeless. What's happening here, of course, is that in order to make their propaganda or whatever that was seem more legitimate, they're going to take the voices of legitimate, trusted people. We've seen this happen with Morgan Freeman as well as a very important voice, and I wish I had a voice like that.
He's got a great voice.
And so
Jim's is not bad.
No one has ever compared me to Morgan Freeman.
I know,
so I think
but
we
what
can
I'm
move
saying
on.
is that, but I do think that people are going to have to fight for their identity rights. This is a different kind of identity fraud. Usually, we think about identity fraud as someone takes your financial identity. But imagine if someone takes your likeness and your voice and puts you in situations that you have never been through. So one of the things that I did a talk last week at the League of Women Voters out by Worcester, and sorry, every once in a while it happens.
Go ahead.
And I was talking with some of the women out there and for the need for biometric information privacy. So that's a lot of words that basically means you should own your face and you should own your voice. And so what's happening in the background of all these generative AI apps that can make likenesses or images of you or do this kind of thing is that there's no guardrails on them. And so unfortunately, where we see this happen the most is in terms of bullying and revenge porn for teenagers.
Yes.
So imagine you go to school one day and someone's sending around pictures of you naked, right? And this is happening. This is not a fantasy of these technologies. And so unfortunately, these kinds of things, once they're out in the world, unless they've put some kind of technological guardrails on them, the only way we can defend against them is by adopting biometric information privacy rules. The only state that has that right now is Illinois. And so we need to take that and say, anybody that creates generative AI tools that's mapping people's faces needs to have permission from people to be able to map those faces. And unfortunately, years and years of using social media, posting selfies on Instagram, that's what's contributing to the data that is allowing these technologies to grow so rapidly.
One of the things that kind of has gone under the radar in this, what the president calls his big, beautiful bill, is preventing states from regulating AI for 10 years. I assume you don't think that's a good idea.
I mean, it's funny because it puts me in league with some folks that would probably rather see me in trouble.
Regulated, yes.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, yeah, I mean, they claim, so the policy or the legal theory of this is that if you allow every state to regulate industries independently, you get a messy regulatory landscape and nobody knows how to operate. That's not really true. I mean, we do have regulation. You know, think about the development of something like the TSA, right? All the things we have to go through in order to get on a plane aren't about how the plane flies. And of course, planes existed before there was regulation about planes. But the minute you take off with a plane load of passengers, it's different, right? And so with AI, now that you're serving it to customers and we have these known digital harms like this revenge porn scenario I just described, we do need serious legislation. The problem, of course, is the oligarchs. If you remember on Inauguration Day, sitting right behind Trump were, the billionaires that control our entire information ecosystem, from Google and Amazon and Meta to X and AI. And so these kinds of things are not by accident. Right? And so when we talk about who's really running and influencing our government, we have to understand that these entrants, these technology guys, are new money, and they are bombastic when it comes to how they deploy it within the political field. And then Musk has been instrumental in bullying senators and congressmen, not just Democrats, but also Republicans, into agreeing with this state of the world. And I'd be remiss not to mention that Musk has built an enormous facility in Memphis that is a serious polluter.
Yeah.
And it's awful. And the people in that area have higher rates of asthma, higher rates of cancer, and no surprise, this is also a Black community. And so in that moment, where we're trying to fight back this wave of rule by oligarchs, we also have to take care of our communities and realize that AI comes at tremendous cost to the environment. Particularly, this is my last point, which is that Eric Schmidt, who made his billions at Google, has said, well, we can withstand this because AI will solve the problems of power and clean water. Because AI requires fresh water to cool it down, and it also requires a tremendous amount of electricity, to the point where Meta is also investing in nuclear power. And so these kinds of things have the possibility of really not just eroding the environment, but also being situated in places in which people have a really hard time fighting back.
By the way, I should say we're out of time, but we should note that you were the initiator of the anti-Tesla protest, even though you gave me permission to continue to own mine, for which I am forever grateful. Joan Donovan,
and we have
you are
several
fabulous.
people that mentioned that they go to these Tesla protests.
Get out there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Happy Pride, everyone.
Same to you.
Thank
Joan,
you.
it's
Thank
great
you
to
very,
see
very
you,
much,
as
Joan.
always. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
for your work. It's so needed. We have been speaking with Joan Donovan, who's the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute and BU Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies. Okay, the Boston Public Radio continues here in Boston. For you listening at NEPM, thank you so much for tuning in to us here. We really appreciate it. You can tune into the fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon on NEPM. Meanwhile, back here in Boston, we're going to be continuing after the new news with Live Music Friday ahead of this year's BAMS Fest in Franklin Park. We'll talk with founder Catherine T. Morris and hear a live reggae performance from the Boston's own Roots Alley Collective. We heard them this morning and they are fantastic. I am Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio on GBH and NEPM. Saying goodbye to NEPM. Thanks for listening. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News right back after the noontime news.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. The life of a young autistic woman who works in the New York Criminal Records Office changes when a detective recognizes her unique powers of deduction and asks her to join her team. Catch the series premiere of Patience Sunday night at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 2 of BPR Live Music Friday with Caribbean music from the Roots Alley Collective, ahead of BAMS Fest this summer. That would be the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival, June 28th at Franklin Park. I'll also talk with its founder, Catherine T. Morris.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then one final dispatch from the Karen Reed courtroom as the prosecution and defense deliver their closing arguments today in the second trial for Karen Reed, accused of murdering her ex-boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. All that on BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Iranian media are reporting that 78 people have been killed and more than 300 injured in Israel's airstrikes in Iran. NPR could not independently confirm the casualty figures. Israel launched an early morning attack on Iran, saying it was targeting nuclear facilities and military targets. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has the latest.
Iran's Fars news agency published online images of destroyed buildings and rubble strewn on roads in what it said were civilian areas in Tehran, reporting that dozens have been killed and injured. Videos posted online showed smoke billowing from neighborhoods across the capital. Israel's military said it struck Iran's main nuclear facility as well as dozens of military targets, killing 3 top security chiefs and several nuclear scientists. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long warned he will not allow Iran to create a nuclear weapon, something that Iran says it doesn't want. On Thursday, the International Atomic Energy Agency, for the first time in 20 years, censured Iran for non-compliance with its inspections of nuclear facilities. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was erroneously deported to his native El Salvador, is pleading not guilty to human smuggling charges. His attorney entered the plea at Abrego Garcia's arraignment today in Nashville, Tennessee. The case amplified President Trump's confrontation with the judiciary after Abrego Garcia was deported in mid-March. He was returned to the U.S. last week to face criminal charges. For now, President Trump is being allowed to keep the California National Guard deployed in Los Angeles. An appeals court has paused an earlier ruling that found Trump unlawfully federalized Guard members to respond to mass protests over what activists argue are indiscriminate detentions by federal immigration agents. Prayer services and vigils are taking place across the United Kingdom following the Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad that killed people on the ground and 241 people on board the flight, including dozens of British nationals. Willem Marks reports the grief has overwhelmed several British Indian communities.
Though the sole survivor of the Air India flight was a British national seated in seat 11A, the airline has confirmed that 52 other UK citizens died when the aircraft smashed into the ground soon after takeoff. As police have continued to examine the site of the crash and release the bodies of the dead to their families, tributes have been paid across Britain to those who perished, including parents and young children travelling together. While forensic experts in India are racing to identify the remaining dead, community leaders in Britain have hailed those who did not survive, including Akhil Nanabawa and Hane Varaji from the west of England, who'd been, quote, widely loved and deeply respected. One London student who was denied boarding for the flight told the BBC she was happy that her life was saved. For NPR News, I'm Willem Marks in London.
It's NPR News.
And good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. The Harvard cancer researcher, originally from Russia, who was detained for bringing frog embryos into the country undeclared, has now been released while her case is pending. A judge allowed Ksenia Petrova to go free after a hearing in Boston federal court on Thursday. Petrova was arrested by immigration agents at Logan Airport in February and had been in custody ever since. Besides the smuggling charges over the frog embryos, Petrova also has an immigration case to deal with as the Trump administration tries to deport her. Her lawyer, Gregory Romanowski, says after what his client's been through, the case should be moot.
She has not decided whether she wants to stay in the United States yet. She has offers from different countries around the world. Countries that are eager to support the important research that she's doing.
Under the conditions of her release, Petrova is not allowed to leave New England. 8 teams from across Massachusetts took the field at Boston College's Alumni Stadium on Thursday for the New England Patriots' 3rd annual Girls High School Flag Football Championship. The Pats started the league that hosts the tournament in 2023 with just 8 teams. This year there were 51. Danny Callahan is a community relations manager for the Patriots and attributes the growth of the league to the passion for the game.
The athletes that are out here today, I mean, you can hear how passionate they are, how passionate the fans are. I think it's just something that once, we got it started, we knew it would explode. We didn't know exactly how, but I think once people caught wind of it, they were so excited to be a part of it.
Earlier this year, the NFL launched its Flag 50 campaign to get girls flag football sanctioned as an official varsity sport in every state. It's something organizers are hoping will happen here in New England. Mostly sunny today, a high in the mid to upper 70s. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live. Thank you from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention that Tuesday we're going to be back here. No, actually, we're going to be in Brighton on Tuesday. No, we'll be back here at the Boston Public Library on Tuesday. Get your act together, Marjorie. And we're going to be speaking via Zoom, but speaking with, nonetheless, Ken Burns, a great filmmaker. Also on Tuesday and also at the library here, we're going to be speaking with the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. She'll be here with us from 1 to 2. Hello again, Jim.
Hi, Marjorie. 2 weeks from this Saturday, it's the annual Boston Art and Music Soul Festival, better known as BAMS Fest, which has become a summertime staple over the last decade here. BAMS Fest is free to all with registration, but donations are encouraged. The whole project is the brainchild of Catherine T. Morris. She'd be right there. Here with us today, she's also the Director of Arts and Culture for the Boston Foundation, bamsfest.org for info and solidarity tickets, performing at the festival as well as right now for Live Music Friday. It's Boston's own Roots Alley Collective. We'll talk with some members in just a couple of minutes, but in the interim, welcome to you all. We're thrilled to have you. Thanks so much.
Another one for the radio, another one for the stereo. Through this phase of the storm, the lane that I found, grace and blessings coming from above. Tell them, say I'm coming right back, coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. Even through the rage and the pain, the scars still remain. The days and the nights we spend in vain. Tell them, say I'm coming right back, coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. Can't keep a good man down, that's what this is like, and we can't walk around with frowns. No, in this life we got to carry, even if it's heavy. Strap on your shoes and make sure that you hear me. Tell them I say you can't keep a good man down, that's what this is like, and we can't walk around with frowns. No, when you're reaching for your goals and the music hits your soul, true hustlers feel it, you already know, yeah. Tell them through this phase of the storm, the lane that I found, grace and blessings coming from above. Tell them, say I'm coming right back, coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. Even through the rage and the pain, the scars still remain. The days and the nights we spend in vain. Tell them, say I'm coming right back. Coming right back. Tell them we coming right back again. I was born for this. Give me a mic and I'm bound to flip. Give me a beat and I'm bound to spit. We keep it real, we not counterfeit. So if it's fake, we not counting it. No, we not counting it. We got the sound of move mountains. We making our wave, drowning it. Music heavy like pounds in it. You could really get 1,000 hits. Chris and Shaq got the lowest. Instruments we about to hit them with. Roots Alley, that's the name of it. No, we not playing games with it. Ain't no time we about to waste with it. A lot of days we done prayed for this. Through this phase of the storm, the lane that I found, grace and blessings coming from above. Tell them, say I'm coming right back. Coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. Even through the rage and the pain, days and the nights we spend in vain. Tell them, say I'm coming right back. Coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. And I know that I've been missing, yeah. Been a victim of the system, oh. Girl, baby, I had to leave, but you was running through my mind like an athlete, yeah, yeah. So tell them we coming back again, yeah. Tell them I'm coming back again, yeah. And the reason why I left was because I knew that I'll be coming back. Even through this phase of the storm, the lane that I found, grace and blessings coming from above. Tell them, say I'm coming right back. Coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. Even through the rage and the pain, the scars still remain. Days and the nights we spend in vain. Tell them, say I'm coming right back. Coming right back. Tell them we coming right back. Tell them we coming. We coming back. We coming. Whoa, yeah. Everybody say we coming back, yeah, coming back. Whoa, yeah. Stabba-dabba-dabba-dum. Yes, I.
Roots Alley Collective.
great.
That was fabulous, gentlemen. A couple of you are going to join us up here. Shaq Gabriel's joining us, and R.J. Walters, and as we said, Catherine T. Morris, who thought of the whole thing. I asked you a minute ago if you were nervous or excited. What was your answer?
Both.
Both. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was fabulous, you guys. They're going to join us in a second.
They're coming over
yeah.
right here, and they're going to introduce, as soon as they get here, the other members of their fantastic band.
That was great, gentlemen.
Yeah.
One of you want to identify these other people playing with you guys?
On bass, we have Christoph Glad, and on, there he goes. And then on pen, we have Jabari York.
You guys are great.
Pen and vocals, sorry.
Okay, so RJ's over there and Gabriel's over here.
Yeah.
Okay, we had it wrong before. So before we get to the band itself, tell us what BAMS is.
So BAMS Fest is a nonprofit organization, volunteer run, that exists to provide access to arts and culture through a Black experience. And we do that through our largest program called BAMS Festival, now in its 7th year. Takes place at Franklin Park Playstead Fields, and we occupy literally 10.5 acres of green space and really cemented as a multidisciplinary arts festival that represents Boston truly.
Okay.
How'd this thing come about?
Yeah, you came up with this. As I understand it, Michelle.
Yeah,
Catherine, thank you.
Catherine, sorry.
No worries.
How'd it happen?
How'd it happen?
Yeah.
Well, Boston allowed me to grow up as a child. I was so inspired by all the things I had access to, record stores, being outside, being able to go to different shows. And over time, I would say the last 30 years, we've lost some of that essence of what it means to be in community. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a festival that was something that our community could be proud of, embrace, welcome it as a new cultural and civic tradition. And 7 years in, we've been able to present over 250 artists, galvanize over 11,000 people, support over 400 small businesses. And now this is the People's Festival now. So it's no longer an idea I have. It is something that community can own and be proud of.
So I was watching which of the two of you were nodding most strongly in agreement with what Catherine said. You won the prize. So how big a deal is this for you guys?
I think it's a huge deal to be able to present what Boston has helped us grow. You know what I mean? Growing up in the city, I feel like we've taken on what that sounds like. So being able to present that back to the city means a huge deal.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Boston Arts Academy.
I know that. Where'd you go to high school?
Fenway High.
Fenway High. So what did that...
Hold on, stop right there. Because, a lot of us spend a lot of time trashing the Boston public schools. Tell people about Boston Arts Academy.
But there's not enough I could say about it, honestly. I think it's really helped shape the musician I am today. Not only the musician, but the person I am today, being able to understand what, how we can use our gifts to better our community and serve our community. Like, our gift is not only just for us, and I think Boston Arts Academy really helped me understand that.
Yeah, so it's all sorts of arts, right? Dancing, what you guys do, all sorts of arts across the board.
Theater.
And let's give a shout. What the heck? Tell us about Fenway.
Fenway is a small school right downstairs. Well, it used to be downstairs from Boston Arts Academy.
And how'd that impact what you've ended up doing with your music?
Again, community. Because all the classes were so small, you had to have to coexist with such a small group of people on one. Like the high school was almost like as small as a hallway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that helps you form a sense of community.
Well,
very
there you
quickly.
go. For all these aspiring little preteen artists out here, here's two graduates of two Boston high schools that really made a difference.
What was your hope and expectations then, Catherine, when you were doing this in Philly, my hometown, right? Were you not before this, or
no,
where were you doing this before?
So this is...
Well, what were you doing? You were in Philly, though, weren't you?
I was at Temple University in Philadelphia.
What were you doing there?
I worked.
No, I know. But I thought you were doing some sort of similar thing. Am I wrong about that?
So I became an intern. I worked for the mayor's office, and I was a part of a festival called Welcome America, which full week of activation shuts the city down, 1 million people, free public programming. And I was so inspired that I wanted to come back home and make sure we had something similar.
So I was close. So what was your expectation a decade ago about what this might become, and how does this, what it is today, multi-day, all this kind of thing, how does it compare to what your hope was?
Just the fact of seeding an idea and hoping that people believe in something they haven't seen yet. That was the hope. And where it is now is that people look forward to this thing. They plan their whole weekends around it. They tell their friends. And we're at the airport now. Like, you will see a banner that promotes our festival. That is a huge milestone.
So how receptive is this community to Caribbean music? Is it welcoming? Are they calling out for it? What's the environment like?
Yeah, it's very welcoming because Boston has a deep history with Caribbean culture, and not only music but culture in general. So, like Bob Marley's first U.S. show was in Boston.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah. There's a really deep history. I learned a lot of it from Shaq actually, but it's a really deep history. So I think there'll always be that reception because there's a huge Caribbean community here. So.
Since he learned from you, do you have the same view on the depth of this thing here?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I mean, this history is probably going back up until the 70s, so we're just like a small, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Puzzle.
How supportive is this community to artists? I mean, in general, and I don't just mean buying tickets. Mm-hmm. We've heard Mayor Wu, when she was running, actually talked to us a lot about how there needs to be more support for artists, and it doesn't just mean buying tickets, even though that's a critical thing. Has that happened in this community, or is it still a work in progress?
I think it's always a work in progress because the base of supporting any kind of artist is starting with their wellness, making sure they have the infrastructure to be successful from cradle to grave, and that the sustainability of that is not just the tickets itself, but also professional development, making sure that folks are made visible on billboards and across different materials. So there's more grants that are available, but the infrastructure of supporting artists can be a lot better.
How about housing and space to work and practice? Is that happening, or is that being priced out of Boston too?
Well, coming out of the pandemic, I mean, the arts and culture sector is the last to recover, but the first that everyone relies on. So there's much more work to do in terms of artist housing and just space in general.
So, by the way, you're expanding this whole thing. You're doing stuff over at Sinclair and Cambridge too, right?
We have 5 additional days this year called Momentum. It is a blueprint for the city of how to activate and incorporate curators, producers of color. We have about 11 different events. We're doing everything from film, fashion shows. We have a kickoff party. We have discussions, the whole gamut. But it's to centralize the fact that Boston is truly a culture destination, a creative hub, and we have to do that together.
Archie, how did this whole happen? How did you guys all come together?
Well, me and Christoph went to a couple of music programs since we were like in 6th grade. Me and Shaq were connected through my brother, actually. He taught my brother steel pan. And I believe you guys knew each other too for a while. So you were friends first.
And how long have you been together?
As a band, 5-6 years now.
Yeah,
so.
I say 6 years.
Yeah.
Someone's going to play the steel drums, I hope, in the second song, right?
For sure.
Okay, just want to be sure.
We went to Berkeley with Jabari.
You know, one of the things I ask every week, I am totally convinced, and it wasn't my thought, but as we say every week, we learned it from Andres Nelsons, who's the conductor of the BSO, that when things are horrible in the world, when there's pain, when people are suffering, what you do is even more important to people who listen to what you do. Do you subscribe to that notion? Do you think it's true?
I do, yeah.
Why?
Because, I would say we as Roots Alley, we find like the role of being a civic servant is most important. Like,
really?
Like she just said, you know, coming out of COVID, you know what I mean? We're on the front line, you know? So yeah, I definitely subscribe to that.
Do you? I'm sorry.
We just did a whole thing earlier in the week.
Who did?
About how there's been all these studies now about how people who sing
right.
together, whether they're in choirs or whether they're in bands.
Not professionals like you guys, real people too.
Well, real people,
Yeah.
but also professionals. How it changes your mental health, how it deals with depression, and how really it's good for your it's good for your health. I mean, I know there may be disputes and how we're going to play the song and arrange the music and stuff. I'm sure it's not all hunky dory, but you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And I guess this has been scientifically proven, Jim.
It has, indeed. How do you fund that? By the way, you work for the Boston Foundation too, right?
I sure do.
You know,
4
Lee
years.
Pelton is here once a month.
Yes,
we should
I
just
do.
say. What's the Boston Foundation role in all this?
One, spreading the word. The fact that I get to sit in a very privileged seat and advocate for artists in the arts and culture ecosystem across philanthropy, but also into other industries to find their way at the table and partner with the arts and culture sector is the role that I get to play and advocate for the needs of artists and creatives and organizations.
Speaking of arts, did you get to see your boss perform in Carousel like we did?
On occasion, I'd sing in the office.
He was really impressive, I should say. The other thing is, how do you fund, this has got to be, I mean, a multi-day, 5 days, right?
5 days.
How do you fund this whole thing? I mean, I know your donations are requested, but if you can't afford it, you can go. How do you fund the whole deal?
We really do ask for donations. A lot of grants from a variety of different places. We lean into corporate sponsorships as long as they're available. But we also partially fund it ourselves because we don't want this thing to go away.
Corporate,
Catherine, this is not a good time for grants, as we know, because the Trump administration is kind of cracking down on grants. Is this going to impact you guys?
We're not exempt. We're just like every other organization. I think the fact is now, it's not just about arts and culture. It's about the fact that what we do as a health and human service is a part of economic development, right? It intersects all these other industries that may have not always looked at us, but need us and everything else. So that's how we have to pivot the talk when we talk about a festival.
Do you guys have, do you have jobs?
Yes.
Other than, how hard is that to be doing something by day and creating beautiful music by night or by afternoon or by whatever?
It's somewhat difficult, but I mean, once you're passion driven like we are, you make it easy.
Same deal?
Yeah, I mean, going to Boston Arts Academy, we've kind of been doing it for a while, so.
What's your goal? What would you like to do with your band?
With my band? Definitely want to travel the world, Europe. But yeah, definitely just continue to spread the message. We're preserving and pushing our culture forward. So that's our mission.
Okay. So in a sec, we're going to talk to Catherine a little bit more while you're setting up. But why don't you tell us, what are you and your bandmates going to play for this time, which is going to include the steel drums? What are you playing this time?
So the next song is called Alignment, and that's our most recent release. It's a soca song on a rhythm compilation, which will be out soon, called the Wabash Rhythm. So you guys could also look out for that. But
how do we find you guys? I just realized. Yeah. Do you have a website or something? What is it?
We're on all social media as Roots Alley Collective.
Roots Alley Collective.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So you want to gently put your headsets down and rejoin your bandmates, and we'll talk to Catherine for another minute while you guys are setting up.
So give us the whole overview, Catherine, of where people can get information, where things are happening.
Yeah, so Bands Festival will start at noon at Franklin Park Playstead Field. Get there early, claim your patch of grass and a blanket. You can find all information about Bands Fest and our festival at bandsfest.org. Our initiative, the additional 5 days, Momentum, bandsfest.org/momentum. But listen, when I tell you there's about 2 to 3 events per day, so I have to be at all of them too.
Okay. Hope you got an electric bike or something.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
So here they are for another tune, Roots Alley Collective. Gentlemen, welcome back.
We're gonna do this next one called Alignment. Make sure you check it out on all streaming platforms. Soca music to the world. How you tell them? From the time I step up my foot inside this fed, something take over me, over me, over me. Look around and see everybody jamming wet like a soca fantasy. Now I feel like liming for true, feel like vibing, I feel like whining. Girl, let me hold on to you. I want to get on real bad, forget the plans that I had. Now the vibe's so nice, how do you expect me to leave? I coming home late tonight. Alignment, 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 alignment. I reaching home late tonight. A whining, a whining, a whining, a whining, a whining. I catch my co-workers liming. Don't want them to tell me nothing. I don't want my phone start ringing. When I wake up late next morning, I forget that I was walking and take a strong drink or something. Something, something, something. Now I feel like liming for true. Feel like vibing. I feel like whining. Girl, let me hold on to you. I want to get on real bad, forget the plans that I had. Now the vibe's so nice, how do you expect me to leave? I coming home late tonight. Alignment, 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 alignment. I reaching home late tonight. A whining, a whining, a whining, a whining, a whining. I coming home late tonight, tonight. Oh yeah. I reaching home late tonight. If you enjoying the vibe, somebody say yeah, yeah. On behalf of the Roots Alley Collective, we want to say a special thank you to BAMS Fest and to WGBH for allowing us to show our culture. If you're glad to be alive for 2025, somebody say yeah, yeah. If you love Roots Alley, when I say Roots Alley, you say collective. Roots Alley. I coming home late tonight. A whining, alignment, alignment, alignment. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Collective. For more information, go to Roots. You can find them on Instagram at RootsAlley_collective. Yeah.
I want to read a couple of texts came in while you guys are playing. Jonathan on YouTube. These are just 3 of many perfect summer mood. Anonymous texter, I love it. Martha in Rhode Island, that band was fantastic. Loved every minute. That was great, guys. Really, really great.
Thank you so much.
Really great.
We have been listening to Roots Alley Collective. Again, you can find them on Instagram at rootsalley_collective. They're performing at Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival in Franklin Park on Saturday, June 28th. Go to bamsfest.org for more info. That's bamsfest.org, and you can buy a pay-as-you-wish solidarity ticket. You can also catch the band earlier. They got a gig Wednesday, June 18th at the Great Middle East in Central Square.
Oh.
That's Roots Alley Collective, also at the Middle East on June 18th. Thank you so much for coming in.
Catherine, you're
and
great.
Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much.
We're really
Okay,
excited.
coming up next, Boston Pride for the People. The city's annual Pride Festival is tomorrow. We're going to talk to the organization's president, Adrianna Boulin, and a member of their leadership, Gary Daffin. That segment you're listening to is on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Climate change shouldn't just be a factor in how we construct buildings, it's also starting to influence how we tear them down.
Typically what happens is a bulldozer will come in, just smash it all, it'll all get trashed. But deconstruction, we try to salvage and recycle as much as possible.
I'm Elsa Chang, how taking apart a building piece by piece helps reduce planet warming pollution on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
And Polar Beverages, family made since 1882. Founded in Worcester, Massachusetts by Dennis Crowley. Offering a range of sparkling seltzers, mixers, and dry sodas. Product information and locations at polarbeverages.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. This year's Boston's Pride for the People Pride Parade and Festival kicks off tomorrow. Head of the festivities are joined now at the Boston Public Library by a Boston Pride for the People president, Adrianna Boulin. Adrianna, it's great to see you, as always.
Great to see you.
And a couple of minutes, Gary Daffin, who is, Gary, you're here. Hi, Gary. It's nice to see you. I thought you were going to be a couple minutes late. Development and Parade co-chair and also president of Multicultural AIDS Coalition. For more information, you can check out bostonprideforthepeople.org. Welcome to you both. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Adrian, start by telling everybody what's going on tomorrow.
So tomorrow, we have a lot going on. We are outside. We are going to be starting right around the corner near here. 11 a.m. our parade will move through our town, end up at the Boston Common where our festival is for our families, all ages. And then 21 plus, our block party starts at 2 p.m. at City Hall Plaza. So we got a lot going on.
Starts on Clarendon. Is that right, Clarendon?
By the Trinity Church.
Okay.
By
the Trinity
Church, yeah. 21 block party. I assume there's going to be some cocktails involved. Is that why?
Yes, there will, and there's dancing, there'll be entertainment, all the things.
Can you explain, Gary, how did this collaboration with No Kings happen? This is a joint effort. They're joining you guys tomorrow, correct?
They're marching in the parade.
Oh, they're marching in the parade.
So yeah, there's this misconception that somehow we have joined forces, but
what have you done?
Tomorrow is Pride. It's Boston Pride for the People. It is a celebration for the LGBTQ community. So a while back, because the No Kings folks had planned this national day, they called us and said, we want to make sure we don't overshadow Pride, we want to be a part of it. So we kind of arranged for them to have a couple contingents in the parade. So they will be in the parade, and then they've sort of sent out messages to their folks saying, come down, let's uplift LGBTQ folks, definitely let's protest for the No Kings, but either be along the sidelines, or if you want to march in the parade, we have a section for them. It's called Section J, so they'll be in the back of the parade, and as many people as want can come and march to the back of the parade. But there's a few contingents that are representing the No Kings folks that are in the parade, but it's not a joint parade.
So I touched a nerve. Is that a safe assumption?
No, it's great. We think it's great. We like it because Pride has always been a protest, and so people also think that we're going to be overwhelmed by them. But I was reminded today, like even if 10,000 people show up, that's 1% of the people who come to Pride. So we manage a big crowd. So an additional 10,000, 20,000 is not a big deal.
So, I mean, Adrianna, I kind of hate to ask this because you look so cheerful all the time when I talk to you, but this has not been a particularly cheerful few months for the LGBTQ community. I mean, there's been a lot of bashing going on. So
There has been.
So what's the mood this year?
The mood is to be out and show that we are here to stay. Our theme.
A
We
t-shirt,
are
Gary's
here
t-shirt.
to stay. That's the mood.
Yeah.
We need to be visible. We need to be united and free and authentic. So the message is that we are here to stay. We are coming together and we are claiming what is ours.
And Gary, we've read about there's being some corporate backtracking, but not so much in Boston in terms of funding and support. There's been a lot of fear, I think.
Yeah, we've been lucky. I mean, from the beginning, we've always been very intentional about how we work with supporters and sponsors. And so we have a lot of local Massachusetts companies that have been with us since we started 3 years ago and are back. We haven't really lost anyone. There may have been a couple that aren't coming back, but that's because it might be economics. It's not any of the bigger sponsors. So we try to have conversations with people to make sure that we aren't inviting people who have supported anti-LGBTQ or anti-abortion campaigns or candidates. And we want to make sure that people sort of share our values and that they are on board with what we're trying to do. And if we find that there's some issue, then we have a conversation with those organizations. We don't sort of make a big public stink and say these people are terrible. We sort of work with them and say, okay, how can we help you fix this? Because most of the time, the people who are approaching us are people from the LGBTQ community. So they're trying to help the community, and so we don't want to just say, we don't want to be punitive at all.
I don't want to gloss over what you're doing, because it's pretty clear to me as somebody who's an observer of your work, it's because of that vetting, for lack of better expression, that you're not seeing a retreat in corporate sponsorship. And I know it's a very controversial issue. We've discussed it with you and others through the years about corporate support for Pride. You've decided we want to find true believers, not convenient believers, not your words, but ours. But let me stay on that just for a second. I am of the belief that one of you used the word fear. I'm not buying that at all. I am buying the notion that those who've decided to withdraw from any DEI or LGBTQ thing were not really committed to begin with.
Period.
And needed an excuse to not do it. Am I off base or no?
I'm with you, and I also understand that businesses need to continue their mission, they need to continue their work, and there's a time to be creative, to think about how to continue that work. So there's a pullback where we're seeing a pullback in language and a pullback in work, and then there's a pullback of just language and finding creative ways to name the work that we're continuing to do for our community.
Yeah, how one would describe this conversation that you're a better person than I am. That I think is how we can describe.
She's a better diplomat.
Maybe
she's a better diplomat than me because I'm, you know me, I've been around.
Yes, we
do. Political work for a while.
Speaking of being around for a while, tell people about the Pride Parade, when it began and how it's evolved through the years.
Yeah, so Pride, most people know that Pride began in New York in 1969 at the Stonewall Bar when people just decided they had had enough. Because it used to be that it was basically against the law to be gay in America, and police would just arrest people, harass people. And the court said, it's perfectly fine for people to drag you out of their house and sort of charge you with all kinds of bizarre laws, breaking all kinds of bizarre laws. But over time, Pride has always been a protest, and people have, as we have won more and more rights and privileges and responsibilities that go along with those, we have tailored Pride to sort of focus on whatever the type of change that we're looking for. So we've, remember back when we were trying to, basic civil rights, that was a big deal. Then it was domestic partnership. And we went to people and said, well, we would never want to try to get married. Like, can you imagine? That's not what we're looking for. And then, of course, as we move along, we sort of said, well, we actually want to have real equality. So marriage was something that we achieved, and the courts decided that makes a lot of sense. So, now we've always sort of opened up and broadened the sort of circle of people who are able to recognize and have the rights and responsibilities that is the promise of America. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And we've always opened that up. And so what's happening now is that people are trying to close that and rein in and literally take away people's rights. Right now it's transgender folks, but then there's some people who say we want to unmarry the gay people. And which I don't know how you're going to do. Force people to get divorced. So, we're saying, look, we are part of this country. We have always been here. We are always going to be here. We're here to stay.
Here to stay.
And so you can try to erase our history. You can take our names off the ships. You can, try
That's
to...
Harvey Milk.
Harvey Milk, yeah.
Yeah,
literally,
who's in the Navy.
You can take you can try to get rid of every holiday that recognizes women or black people or queer people. But we're all going to be here. Women are not going anywhere, hopefully, because we do want to have a future.
Here to stay.
Black people are going to be here, Latino people are going to be here, queer people are going to be here. So we're not going anywhere. We're just going to continue to fight. And as you know, we are used to fighting. That's sort of been our existence. And we usually win in the long run.
Can I tell you something? I'm not going to destroy the positive mood. I'm going to add to it for a second, and then I'll get negative, which is what I do for a living. I have to say, if we had to rate the reception that semi-regular guests here, when former Chief Justice Margaret Marshall joins us, who I think everybody knows authored the opinion on same-sex marriage, the first one here, the warmth with which she is greeted in this crowd is just epic. I almost can't describe the palpable feeling here, and it's because of, I think, how much people value what she did, and then the granting of, which shouldn't have taken so long, of basic rights. But then, at the same time, let's talk about the negative for a second. Maybe this is what you're referencing. The largest Protestant group, Southern Baptist Convention, had its meeting, voted overwhelmingly to reject. They've always been against same-sex marriage, but this is the first vote like this. And their hope is that this rogue Supreme Court will do what it did to Roe v. Wade and ultimately get to the point where they decide that same-sex marriage is also a violation of the Constitution. Adrianna, does that worry you, or are you confident that this country will stay the course despite those 6 conservatives?
I'm confident that this country will stay the course. We are here to stay. We are here to stay. And I know we are seeing things that would bring concern or have us question that, but I'm keeping my mind and focus on what I know to be true and what's going to remain, because there's a lot around us distracting us right now, and this distraction can bring us to disorganization. So I'm staying focused on what I know to be true, what I want to remain to be true, and staying organized with people who can create that advocacy around it. So the answer to the question from my perspective, and I'm curious for you, is I'm focused on what I want to remain. I don't even want to consider what if. I want to prepare for how do we protect what is.
Okay, so I have one more. Can I do one more negative?
Go ahead.
Then we're going to return to positive. As I mentioned when I introduced you, Gary, in addition to everything else, you're president of the Multicultural AIDS Coalition. What's gotten lost in most places on the unbelievable vote yesterday in the House of Representatives to claw back all the $1 billion plus for public media, which is obviously horrible. I think it pales next to what was done for the program created by George W. Bush, who I believe is a Republican, PEPFAR, which I think used to be a bipartisan program supported overwhelmingly by Republicans and Democrats. Most objective observers said saved 25 million lives. The Senate is yet to vote. So can you talk for a minute about the importance of this program being preserved?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that taking off my solely queer hat and putting on my HIV advocate hat, because HIV does not just affect gay people.
Understood.
And around the world, it affects largely people who are not gay or LGBTQ. And it largely affects women, women of childbearing age, and lots of children. And so one of the great things about this country is that we have been a leader in the world, both military, but also soft power, sort of going around making sure that we intervene and help people have better lives. And that's one of the great achievements of PEPFAR. It's saved millions of lives at this point, preventing people from getting HIV, but also people who do have HIV, allowing them to get care. And as we know, if you get care now, you can live a pretty much normal life. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a disaster. It makes it seem like we're an uncaring country, that we don't keep our word, and that we don't have an interest in the health of other people, as if diseases respect our visas and our borders. I mean, HIV, SARS, COVID does not sort of check and say, oh, are you American? We're not going to get on your plane. That's just not the way the world works. And so we are worried that our sort of retreat will in fact cause an increase in the number of people who are acquiring HIV. And not just in other countries. I mean, there's also an attempt to retreat here in the United States.
Around the vaccine research.
From vaccine research, by really attacking the CDC and removing prevention dollars. And we estimate, there's been estimates made that there will be up to 14,000 deaths in the next 5 years if those cuts go through, another 113,000 new HIV acquisitions if those cuts go through. And we've almost eliminated mother-to-child transmission of HIV in the United States, but if people aren't getting care and therefore being, virally suppressed and not transmitting the virus, it's quite possible that we will see an increase in the number of mothers, pregnant women becoming positive, and therefore children being born with HIV, which is something we just have not seen in this country.
And let's be clear, again, because I don't there's still hope here. The House did vote by 2 votes, 214 and 212. The bill, which has to be voted on, I think, by July 9th or some date like that, is pending in the Senate. And while they have a 3-vote Republican majority, there are some people in the Republican Party who support both PEPFAR as they used to and public media.
There's always been bipartisan support for PEPFAR in particular, but also for HIV programming around the country, because HIV is in every state. And so we do expect that there are going to be Republican representatives and senators who will stand up for making sure that we are funding HIV, particularly domestically. But we also want to get back to the point where people understand, and there are definitely senators, Susan Collins in Maine being one of them, who understands how important PEPFAR is and is going to fight for it. So we are not giving up on that at all. We generally don't give up on any fight that we have. We try to win in the long run. So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're talking with Boston Pride for the People President Adrianna Boulin and Development and Parade Co-Chair Gary Daffin, who's also president of the Multicultural AIDS Coalition. Adrianna, tell people again, you talked about the 21 plus party and the parade itself, starting at Trinity Church, Copley Square, moving down to where City Hall is. So what are people going to see in the parade? And then we'll tell us about the 21 plus party.
People are going to see a beautiful tapestry of beingness and honoring pride in whatever way that means for people. That might be seeing our youth and seeing their joy expressed as our act of resistance. It may be seeing a commemoration of people who we've lost. We have a trans memorial that's also in the parade. We have several different organizations, healthcare organizations, LGBTQ employee resource groups representing several different organizations and businesses. So many individuals that will be joining our parade as well. In the section that Gary mentioned earlier, it'll be an expression of what pride is for different people. So it'll be a tapestry of diversity, unique diversity that we love to uplift.
Well, it's also a huge amount of joy in this parade. I mean, it is, no matter what the world is like, it is so joyful in so many ways. It is really quite beautiful.
And if you're still 21, you want to hang around down
You want to hang around. If you're 21, 2 to 6 at City Hall Plaza is our block party. We'll have some vendors there. We have a beer garden there. We have entertainment there, dancing. All of our areas have accessibility tents as well. So if you have different needs, you want to check in and need things there, there's a tent at the block party as well, and also along our parade path.
Gary Daffin, you've been involved in how our governments in Massachusetts have reacted on these issues for a long time. We talked about how the federal government is in retreat, or actually in affirmative, almost warfare. How's Boston and Massachusetts doing on issues that matter to both of you, and I hope everybody here?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a little bit of a oasis, I suppose. I mean, obviously for us, we have a governor who's a member of the community, who's a lesbian governor. We have the first woman of color who's the mayor of Boston, who's completely supportive, and actively making sure that people understand that they have our back, that they're supporting us, and that they are going to fight against these attempts to erase our community. And we've had supportive mayors and governors in the past. I think these two are particularly on point and on board. But I'm from Alabama, so I go back and forth sometimes.
Oh my gosh!
And it's like it's like having a split personality. It is a very different world.
What do you think this is about, though? I mean, obviously, President Trump is the president now and pushing a lot of this. But is it? We talk a lot about, especially in the Black community, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, the reaction, the blowback, and all that. Is it more than Trump? Is it? What do you think?
So yeah, I was going to say also here, our legislature has been great when it comes to HIV. We've been, been pretty good over the years. We have individual funding for HIV. I think it's not just Trump, and I think we also say we use his name too much. I mean, he is the leader, but there's a legislature, there's a Congress, and they are allowing this to happen. Either because they're allowing different things to happen.
Yeah.
And people say there's a backlash. I think that the bottom line is that people aren't feeling that the government is working for them. And so what some people try to do is point to individual folks and say, it's because of these people. It's because of people of color. Now it's because of transgender people. There are not that many transgender people in the world, and let alone in the United States. So to sort of blame them for all the troubles of the country is just a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's what happens is that people aren't, we're not providing health care to everybody. We're not providing a living wage to everybody. People don't feel like they can advance in the country. People don't feel like they can have what we used to think of as the American dream.
So it's their fault.
And so it's somebody else's
Yeah.
fault. It's not our fault. And we need to make sure that we keep what we can for the people who are doing well, even if we have to do it on the backs of people who are poor. I'm taking off my queer hat and putting it on.
Can I be on the anti-trans horrible stuff in this country? I'm going to be positive for a minute. I may have said this to one or both of you in the past. Sue O'Connell was on our show like 15 years, she's a regular now, about 15 years ago, and we're looking at a poll in the New York Times when support for same-sex marriage was, I think, in the 30% range. The only two demographics that supported same-sex marriage were young people and people who said, I know someone who's LGBTQ. Right. My attitude about the trans thing, and I hope it's not unduly optimistic, is there's still young people who are much more tolerant and inviting than everybody else. And I have the same hope that we saw when same-sex marriage numbers jumped into the 70s. As soon as people get to know a trans person, as a neighbor, as a coworker, as a something down the street, the same thing's going to happen on that front. Am I unduly optimistic
I think so.
or no?
When you get to have an opportunity to connect with someone and see that they're human, it breaks down the perceptions that the system that we're in causes. When you were speaking to, is it the person whose name we don't need to say all the time or something else? It's a system. It's a system that creates these unfavorable experiences. So when you get to connect with someone and you see outside the system, they're human, it will change it. So I agree with you.
So we only have 2 minutes left. Let's go to the real positive. Make one more pitch for people who are sort of on the fence about spending part of their day tomorrow with you. Adrianna, you can start.
Oh, come outside. The city is going to be live. Come outside. Come outside. The city is going to be live. Again, we'll start right here, right around here. Start the parade at 11 a.m. by Trinity Church. And we are walking through the South End to the Boston Common. That's where our festival will be from 12 to 4. And then if you're 21 plus, from 2 to 6, you can come to the block party. So please party with us, party with our city.
Can you top that, Gary, or no?
Nope.
Here to stay. We are here to stay.
I would just say that people who want to show their support for what can be a better approach to America, I would invite you to come out, both because we want you to support LGBTQ people. We still need your support. We need you to show that you're with us, even if whether you're LGBTQ or if you're a family member or a friend. This is a day for you as well. And because we do get, a million people, they're not all queer. There's a bunch of folks coming out. So we invite everybody to come out. And if you want to protest issues that you're passionate about, that's fine. Just do it peacefully, which always happens. And it's just going to be fun. It's going to be a great day. Lots of different people.
Happy Pride. We're really thrilled to have you. Good luck.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have been speaking with Boston Pride for the People's Adrianna Boulin and Gary Daffin. This year's Pride Parade and Festival, all of it takes place tomorrow, June 14th. For more information, go to this website, bostonprideforthepeople.org. That's bostonprideforthepeople.org. Thank you so much for coming in. Coming up after a quick break, two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the movie Jaws, a box office success because of John Williams' now iconic score. We deconstruct the music that scared Americans out of the water. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Benchmark Senior Living. Benchmark's Mind and Memory Care program is committed to instilling dignity and independence for residents by offering personalized care plans, working at every residence's pace. Locations and more at benchmarkseniorliving.com. And Burton's Grill and Bar, featuring a scratch kitchen where each dish is customizable for those with food allergies or restrictions. A gluten-free menu is also available. Details on their allergy protocols at burtonsgrill.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Time for two more things. Marjorie, what's your one more thing?
Well, just sometimes I like to look at the wildness of some of the people that are in the cabinet, and the president himself, of course, is running the country. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, wants to talking about invading Greenland, people in Greenland. If you're really happy to hear those kinds of things. Kristi Noem denying that Senator Padilla identified himself before she had him. Padilla, excuse me. And then, of course, she was lying about that. He did identify himself. But then I was watching the Jimmy Kimmel show last night. The president's got a thing about windmills. I'm not sure why they upset him so much. He doesn't call them wind turbines. He calls them windmills. They are wind turbines, as in wind farms that we like to get because they help with our greenhouse gas problem. Anyway, Kimmel played a clip of Trump going on and on about windmills last night. I just thought I would share it with our listeners. Here it is.
The windmills are killing our country, by the way. They don't look alike, and they're not painted alike, different colors. You have, even if they're white, one's a beigey white, one's a darker white, one's a lighter white. Windmills all over the place. Tall ones, short ones, windmills all over. These horrible, horrible structures.
These ugly, horrible things, he goes on. Dead ones. They're all dead. Some are hanging all over the place. They're not allowed to bury the propellers, This is Trump. He kept going. The props, right? I don't know why they can say they can't bury the propellers, certain type of fiber, whatever, it goes into the ground, we're all going to die. He went on forever about these, most of which is baloney.
Shocking.
But the laughs were coming from the people in Kimmel's audience, by the way. How deranged does he sound?
Who?
Trump.
Deranged.
Okay.
Is that the answer?
That's it.
I'm going to speak about one of the people you touched upon. That would be the dog killer, her own dog. This is Kristi Noem, a woman who didn't know what habeas corpus was. By the way, she's the Secretary of Homeland Security, and a person, as Marjorie said, who allowed the arrest and handcuffing of a U.S. Senator who just wanted to ask her a question yesterday. Kristi Noem is another one of the Trump faux tough guys trying to impress the boss. I hope you've heard these horrible ads on radio in Boston. They don't play here, where she's playing tough guy about coming after undocumented people and how you should self-deport. And then, I think just yesterday, this poster appeared. Do we have a picture of this thing? Here it is. Help you. It's Uncle Sam. It's a World War II era kind of poster. Help your country and yourself. Report all, I love this expression, this comes from Trump, foreign invaders. Foreign invaders. Just more of the same macho, inhumane, sadistic, trumped-up, racist rhetoric from people who are obsessed with punishing anybody who doesn't look like them, who for the most part, despite what Donald Trump as candidate said, are not the rapists and murderers that he'd like to talk about, but rather people who are escaping violence, poverty, trying to earn a decent amount of money for their families, trying to help keep our American economy afloat. But I have to say, all of the people that play to Trump and his administration are small, but I would argue that none is smaller than Secretary Noem. And we just have to stand by people who are just like us, trying to provide for their families, trying to have some dignity in their lives, and they are not foreign invaders. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay, thank you very much,
Well,
Jim.
thank you very much, Marjorie.
So we were hoping to speak with Sue O'Connell
We were.
right after the 1 o'clock news because she's been in the courtroom listening to the closing arguments in the Karen Reed trial. Unfortunately, the closing arguments are still going on, so Sue can't be here. But instead, we're going to re-air our recent conversation with the journalist Adam Chandler about his new book, 99% Perspiration, A New Working History of the American Way of Life. Adam is basically talking about the fact that the so-called American dream is harder and harder to achieve in the United States of America in 2025. He's going to tell us why. Adam Chandler and 99% Perspiration is up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Porter Square Books, hosting Tamara Miles with Meaningful Work about how to ignite passion and performance in the workplace. June 18th at 7 at PSB, Boston edition. Info at portersquarebooks.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR. Boston Pride for the People is here at the library. Adrianna Boulin, President, and Gary Daffin on the event leadership committee join us ahead of a City Pride rally tomorrow, timed alongside the City No Kings rally, titled No Kings, but yes, Queen. We'll talk with Adrianna and Gary about what to expect at this weekend's Pride event.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Father's Day this weekend. We'll open the lines to ask you, are fathers really doing all they claim to be doing in the nuclear family 2025? Dads, stereotypes, and you. That's next on BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's urging Iran to make a deal with Israel to limit its nuclear program after the Islamic Republic came under a wave of Israeli airstrikes. NPR's Greg Myrie has more.
The main target was nuclear facilities and an attempt to inflict as much damage on Iran's nuclear program as possible. I'll mention one place in particular. It's Natanz, which is considered the main uranium enrichment facility outside Tehran. Israel said it inflicted significant damage.
NPR's Greg Myrie. The Iranian government says a number of top officials and nuclear scientists were killed. The country retaliated with a swarm of drones. The Israeli military says it is intercepting them. National Guard troops remain deployed in Los Angeles. An appeals court will review a ruling by a federal judge that said President Trump exceeded his presidential authority when he federalized the troops. Steve Futterman has more from Los Angeles.
The National Guard troops are visible again today. How long they will remain here is unclear. A three-judge panel from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals will review Judge David Breyer's ruling. Breyer rejected Trump's claim that he was responding to a rebellion and ordered control of the Guard to revert back to Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom is hopeful.
The police do policing. Military is for the battlefield. These folks are now being commandeered to do ICE raids.
The case could still go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Meanwhile, it was a very peaceful night here in downtown L.A. as a curfew was in place for a third straight night. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador, pleaded not guilty to human smuggling charges at a hearing in Nashville today. Abrego Garcia was deported in mid-March, and he was returned to the U.S. last week to face criminal charges. A massive military parade will roll through downtown Washington, D.C. tomorrow, including tanks, thousands of troops, and a flyover. The parade is to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Army. It is also President Trump's 79th birthday. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports there are hundreds of protests against the parade planned nationwide.
Organizers are calling them the No Kings protests. They're currently set to take place in around 1,500 cities across the country. There is not one planned for Washington, D.C., although there are several other protests planned in the city. President Trump has warned that any protests at the parade will be met with, quote, very big force. The military parade comes as Trump has sent the military to Los Angeles in reaction to protests there. D.C. has been preparing for the parade all week with armored vehicles and tanks streaming into the city and significant road closures already in effect. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Washington.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamolt. Advocates of people with severe mental disabilities are pushing for legislation that would keep open the state's last two live-in care facilities. GBH's Marilyn Scherer has more.
David Castle is with the Massachusetts Coalition of Families and Advocates. He says the fight to preserve the Rentham Developmental Center and the Hogan Center in Danvers goes back to the 1970s and a landmark court ruling that required improvements in institutional housing. Castle says the state is no longer offering placement in intermediate care facilities, or ICFs. He says they offer appropriate care for people with severe mental disabilities that a community group home cannot provide.
We believe they're in violation of federal law because federal Medicaid law requires that if you have an ICF, it's in your Medicaid plan, you have to offer it as an option, and they're not doing that.
Castle is concerned that not accepting new residents is a prelude to closing the two facilities. Marilyn Scherer, GBH News.
Congressman Seth Moulton is denouncing Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's actions yesterday after Senator Alex Padilla of California was forcibly removed from a news conference on immigration raids and handcuffed. The Massachusetts congressman says he feels that Padilla's First Amendment rights were violated.
So it shouldn't matter whether you're a senator or not. You get to ask a question at a press conference without being handcuffed. I mean, if you don't think that this is a sign of an authoritarian regime, then I don't know what is.
Moulton also called out Secretary Noem's claim that Padilla failed to identify himself. Padilla was heard identifying himself in the recording of the incident. Mostly sunny today with highs in the mid to upper 70s. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We were scheduled to speak with Sue O'Connell right now. She's in the courtroom where the closing arguments are being delivered in the Karen Reed trial. Unfortunately, they are still going on, so she's unable to join us. So instead, we will re-air our recent conversation with journalist Adam Chandler about his new, really interesting book called 99% Perspiration, New Working History, The American Way of Life. As soon as that plays, we will return to live radio, and we will talk to you, people can call in, we hope they will, about Father's Day and the contention that a huge percentage of fathers are making today that they are equal partners in the raising of the children. So you'll listen to Adam Chandler, then Margie and I will return live, and then you can enjoy the fabulous culture show. But first, here's Adam Chandler.
Congratulations. Good to see you again, Adam. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, I am so thrilled to talk to you, and your timing could not be any better because what you're talking about in your book is what I hear, especially from people in their 20s and 30s all the time that are just really struggling. So give us your thesis.
Well, the idea behind the book is that we've been told all of our lives in culture and policy and all these different ways that if you work hard, you're going to get where you're going. You're going to be successful and you're going to make it. And if you don't get there, it's because you didn't try hard enough. It's this impossible logic to success in American life. And it's frustrated a lot of us. It's cost us a lot in terms of our social cohesion and our lives. And it makes work central to our lives in ways that community and families and friends really should be. And so I kind of dug into the myth of all of that and saw, where did it come from? You know, what are the reasons why we believe this in a way that other countries don't have the same attitude about work and their jobs and professions as part of their identity?
Is Ben Franklin partly responsible for the greatly admired Ben Franklin responsible there, Adam?
Absolutely. Ben Franklin is kind of the first person to introduce this idea of the secular version of the Protestant work ethic. He was all about working hard and getting ahead, but he had a lot of advantages. He came up in a time where, first of all, slavery was still legal, so the economy wasn't fair to begin with at the time, and he was somebody who benefited from a lot of breaks. He had mentors, he had people helping him out, and not everyone has access to those kinds of support systems that he did.
Tell us the story about the bald eagle, which I know a lot about Franklin thanks to Ken Burns and reading and whatever, but I never heard this one. What's the bald eagle story?
I love the bald eagle story. Well, so they announced the bald eagle is the national symbol and the national bird of the United States. And in a letter to his daughter, Ben Franklin writes that he wishes it wasn't the eagle because bald eagles are kind of lazy. They steal the prey of other birds who work really hard to get fed, and they swoop in at the last minute and take what someone else has done to feed their own. And he says instead the turkey should be the national bird, which is a really funny idea and a really funny thought. But his argument is that the turkey is someone who is protective of his land and is a native bird to North America and really represents the American spirit better. So I always love that story too.
We're talking to Adam Chandler. The book is 99% Perspiration, A New Working History of the American Way of Life. I wondered, Adam, if you ever thought there was a time where this worked better, assuming you were white, because if you were black or you were Latino or so, there was obviously huge racism, but if maybe the period after World War II, there was some exception to this, that the American dream was, we had more social mobility, I guess. Or am I incorrect?
No, you're absolutely correct. If you look at the post-war boom, that's what an era that a lot of people are most nostalgic for when they talk about the good old days of American opportunity. And some of that was because of union density. We had high union membership, and there were opportunities for people to make sure that their bosses didn't make 50 or 60 or 70 times more than they did.
Yeah.
Hundreds times more if you look at some companies. You also had kind of this false promise of post-war America where all of America's competitors, a lot of them at least, they were kind of in shambles after World War II. The economies of Europe were smashed by the war. So we have this false idea of the 50s and the post-war boom as being this American greatness that was kind of artificial because we really had a 20-year head start on a lot of the other economies out there. So it's complicated.
Adam Chandler, this may be too much of a leap, but you're the guy to ask since you wrote the damn thing. My takeaway from your book is there's sort of a little bowling alone, kind of the great Bob Putnam book in this. Well, I know you know what I'm talking about. There is, right?
Yes.
And explain why.
Well, so if we're looking at how work has become so central to our identity and striving to be successful, as it gets harder and harder to succeed, we isolate ourselves. We isolate ourselves because we're working later hours, or we isolate ourselves because we're not as successful as we want to be. And there's a lot of shame in that in American life. If you don't make it here, you're meant to feel like it's a character flaw of yours. It's not because the economy wasn't good. It wasn't because there were difficulties in sort of career paths that were interrupted by recessions or bad policies or bad trade deals. It was because you didn't try hard enough. And so that kind of leads to an alienation. And we're seeing this kind of play out in our politics and in our culture, just not having the opportunities and the time that we need to be there for our friends and family in our community, because work has kind of replaced this as a way to show that we're valued and that we have identity outside of ourselves. And it's a big part of the question right now.
Well, also, I think because even if you are reasonably successful and you're doing reasonably well, everything has become so expensive that everything is out of reach. What's
the stat in your book? A third of Americans with full-time jobs can't afford basic necessities.
Yeah.
And that's before the so-called big, beautiful bill, right?
That's right.
Obviously.
That's absolutely right. The stats will blow your mind. I mean, Americans are so much more productive, 64% more productive than they were in the 70s, and they're making 17% more than they were in 1979, only 17% more. The economy is more than doubled in size, and people are falling behind. They're falling into debt. We're seeing it all over the place, and no one is immune to it.
We talk a lot about how if you try to, shorten the work week in Paris by half an hour, everybody goes crazy and they're taking to the streets and yelling and screaming. We talked last week.
Lengthen the work week by half hour.
Lengthen by a half hour. Yeah, but there is going to be demonstrations this Saturday across the country about the Trump administration. But it seems to me that we're kind of passive in general. That we take a lot. I mean, other countries, obviously, they have better health care. They have a better safety net. They have better. They don't die as young as we do. All these things. So, do you think people don't know it, or are we uniquely uninterested in our plight?
It's a really good question. I mean, we put so much cultural emphasis on self-reliance here and on individual greatness that it really takes a lot to kind of see through all of the ways that is kind of programmed into our systems, into our culture and our schools, and the way that our politics operates. It's all about getting it done by yourself and not ever needing help, not ever relying on people around you. And that's a lonely and difficult way to live versus other countries where people who are struggling together tend to band together. And this is something that unions help create, but it's also something that communities help create when you look at the challenges that people are facing regarding things like healthcare or like time off or like paid leave, paid sick leave. All these things that we lack are sort of a distraction because we are so focused on making the best of it regardless. That's sort of our ethos.
You mentioned unions in the community, and one of the things unions and communities do is they lobby governments to do good things for people. And my only issue with your book, where I really take issue, is I think you say something like, I'm not suggesting we become France. I am suggesting we become France. Adam Chandler, you tick off some things that we've done whole segments on the show. The right to disconnect, meaning that an employer can't force you to, in fact, I can't even ask you if I think it's the state of the law, off hours to check your email, to respond to an email, that sort of thing. 35-hour work week. How long have we had the 40-hour work week? 90 years in this country? It's probably time to do something there. The lunch break thing, which I didn't even know about. You want you to describe that in a minute. But essentially, government has intervened and made sure, for whatever reason, I don't know where the pressure points were, that people have better lives than we do. I mean, that's a fair statement, right?
Absolutely. We defer to businesses. To set the corporate culture sort of sets the tone as opposed to what workers want or what workers need, which is why even if you have all of these vacation days and people are lucky to have them, most people don't take them. I know. A majority of people do not take all their vacation days. And if you have unlimited time off, you take even fewer because it doesn't feel like it's yours to take. You don't feel empowered to do the things that you need for yourselves. People often sort of rely on their off hours to do the basic errands of their lives or get their doctor's appointments or do whatever it is that they need to do. And they have no free time or leisure as a result of that. And that's just not part of other cultures. They see that burnout that you have from working too much or from not having enough time away as something that detracts from your ability to remain creative and engaged in your work. There are really fascinating studies in other countries where they look at how that correlates from having enough time off, enough benefits or basic sort of perks that make it so that you feel empowered to take time away, and how that shows that people ultimately stay at their jobs longer and make essentially more money for companies because they treat their workers better.
Well, one of the ways.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
It's just not in our vocabulary to look at giving workers and people the benefits that would make them more creative and more engaged. American businesses lose over $1 trillion a year to attrition. These are people leaving jobs that they can't afford to stay at, or they're tired, or they're burnt out, or they just can't work under the conditions that they're facing anymore. That's money that could be made by businesses if they treated their workers and invested in their workers more, or if government forced their hand a little bit to do so.
You know, we've said 1,000 times on the show that if you go into the business community in 2019 and said, how about creating a hybrid work environment for your employees, they would have said it'd be the end of Western civilization as we know it. COVID comes along, they're forced to do it, and look at the outcome. One of the things I mentioned in that little litany from your book of things government has done in France to make life better for the worker is the lunch deal. Could you share some stats in this country and tell us what France has done? Which, by the way, may sound trivial to some of you. In my view, it ain't trivial in the slightest. Tell us about it.
Well, if you zoom out and look at the average French person's life, they have an hour more of sleep every single day. They have an hour more of leisure every single day, and they live 5 years longer than the average American does. They may not get the, Jeff Bezos kind of wealth that someone else, it's hard to accrue that kind of insane amount of money, but you're trading a lot for this idea that if you just keep grinding it out, it's going to work out for you. But the reality is that it costs more in terms of our social cohesion, in terms of our happiness, in terms of the time that we have with ourselves and with our friends and with our families to work this hard. And so that's one aspect of it. And so this is actually something that they stumbled on kind of by accident. During the Industrial Revolution and tuberculosis, they instituted an hour-long lunch break in France where they would air out the factories and offices so that people would be safer at work. And they realized that by giving people that time off, an hour, maybe 2 hours in some cases, people were more productive. They socialized. They were better performing at their jobs. And they realized this is a good thing for us. This is a social good that we should make part of our labor code. And they did. And it's been the case ever since that you have at least an hour. Now, there are some exceptions to this. It's not a perfect law, just like 35-hour work week in France isn't a perfect law. But you set these cultural guidelines and people come to expect, I'm going to have some time during my day to catch up with a friend, catch up with a coworker, run some errands. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to feel good about the end of my day and being free of everything, and having the opportunity to really unplug and relax. That makes a huge difference in quality of life issues that a lot of Americans feel burnt out by.
And what percentage of us in America eat lunch at our desks? 60%? Is that the number?
The most recent number is around 60%. And it's wild to think about it because just imagine, this American experience. I was traveling in France while I was reporting this book. And I went to Normandy. I went to the World War II sites.
Oh, gosh.
And we were given a 15-minute break for lunch. We were a little bit behind, and everyone was a little bit kind of rushed. And they said to the group, we only have 15 minutes to eat. I hope that's okay. And Americans were like, no problem. We had some other people from Germany and from Italy. They were shocked. They're like, how are we supposed to get lunch done in 15 minutes? That's insane. And I was like, honestly, make it 10 minutes. Make it 5. I don't care. I can do it.
We're talking to Adam Chandler. The book is 99% Perspiration, A New Working History of the American Way of Life. By the way, tell people where the 99% perspiration line came from.
Oh, sure. It's the famous Thomas Edison quote, genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration.
Yeah.
And, it kind of sums up the ethos of American life. Thomas Edison is this genius, tinkerer, founder type, and he's held up as this character that everyone should emulate. And his whole idea is just keep working hard and you'll get there. And that's not really the case.
You also talk about the so-called ragged by design safety net and that our government programs are purposely gummed up. In this piece you wrote, you talk about people waiting for a decision from the Social Security Administration. Tell people about that.
What's alarming about this is that our government and our social services are kludgy by design. They make it difficult for you to get your benefits. They make it difficult when you are on public assistance programs. You constantly have to do all of this paperwork that makes it not worth it. And when it comes down to Social Security, 10,000 people die every single year waiting for a Social Security disability claim to be adjudicated or solved or sort of sorted out after a refusal or dismissal, an initial appeal. And that's a huge number. Another 8,000 people go bankrupt in that time. So we're talking about tens of thousands of Americans every single year who are waiting for the benefits that they pay into the system to receive. And because of the understaffing and the things that DOJ is trying to do to make it even more difficult to get your benefits, it's all by design to make people decide this isn't worth it. It isn't worth it for me to get all of these benefits that I'm entitled to by my taxes, to get me through a rough spell, to get me through a difficult period, to help me out when I lose my job or I need extra assistance or I become the sole caregiver, whatever the case is. And we don't have those same kinds of difficult sort of obstacles for wealthier people who receive tax cuts, who get all kinds of wild benefits that we don't think of as handouts. And it's an important distinction to make because we really do give billions of dollars every single year to wealthier people without really batting an eye. And it's easy to do.
Adam, one of the things we've discussed, Marjorie and I have been on the air 26 years, give or take a month or two. One of our most frequent topics through the years is national service. And we've discussed it with a lot of guests. Almost every guest who's ever been in this room or a studio who supports it on a voluntary basis. My position is if it's voluntary, you're going to capture the people who wouldn't benefit from national service and miss the people who would. And it seems to me that the call for national service should be even greater now when we are as divided and don't know people or associate with people who are not like us. You talk a little bit about it. Fill in why you think that would matter and where you fall on the mandatory versus voluntary with incentives kind of spectrum.
Sure. Well, I speak with General Stanley McChrystal in the book, who is one of the most decorated members of the military before he retired. And he talks about social cohesion that he witnessed while in the military. And that's something that we absolutely need in our culture right now, because we are so disconnected, because we are so fragmented. We're not just politically sort of gerrymandered out of encountering people that we disagree with. We're also economically divided. We live in enclaves that are less sort of cohesive and less sort of, I guess, normalized than they used to be. When decades ago, people used to live in neighborhoods where a dock worker and a doctor would live on the same street and their kids would go to the same school and there would be that kind of interchange. Mm-hmm. We're past that now. And so I actually think it should be mandatory. And I'm going to say it because we're at a breaking point in our social lives where we absolutely need to understand what each other's problems are and what each other, we need to restore the common good and the common faith. And those are the kinds of things that aren't going to happen voluntarily at this point. We really should be pushing for this to become
like after high school or something, right? Post high school, pre-job, pre-college, pre-whatever, right?
Exactly. It could be a cultural norm that we set, but it's the kind of thing that could do a lot, not just for high school graduates or young people. It could connect younger people and older people, rural and urban, rich and poor. This is the kind of thing that you send people out to do all these programs and learn from each other and give to each other. And we all benefit and we all trust in each other again, because we don't have a lot of mutual trust anymore. There is this real heavy sense of suspicion, and it's clouding everything that we do in our lives. But I spent, months traveling around the country writing this book and talking to people in Alabama. And I went to Plymouth, I went to California, I went to liberal places and rural places. And if you get past a few basic conversations with people, you have, beyond the point where you know what political party a person belongs to, we have very similar beliefs about opportunity and what a good life means and what it represents. And it's just there are a lot of obstacles that are artificially imposed on us. But when you have a really good conversation with someone, it really makes you feel differently about this country.
Couldn't agree more. Congratulations. It's great to see you, Adam.
Ditto. Congratulations. Like I said, this is incredibly timely. So thank you very much for your book and for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with journalist and author Adam Chandler. His latest book, again, 99% Perspiration, A New Working History of the American Way of Life. And up next, we open the lines about Father's Day, which is this Sunday. A lot of talk over the past few years about America's fathers finally stepping up to the plate. Are you buying it? Especially if you're a mother Lines are open, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Climate change shouldn't just be a factor in how we construct buildings, it's also starting to influence how we tear them down.
Typically what happens is a bulldozer will come in, just smash it all, it'll all get trashed. But deconstruction, we try to salvage and recycle as much as possible.
I'm Elsie Chang, how taking apart a building piece by piece helps reduce planet-warming pollution on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Blythewald, with big, beautiful bamboo birds. 6 sculptures in the gardens, 15 to 30 feet tall, by artist duo The Mythmakers. Blythewald.org. And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A reminder to everyone listening, after you're through hooting and hollering down in D.C. for Trump Pride, this Sunday is Father's Day. So we're opening the lines to get your thoughts at 877-301-8970 to call or text. We're in an era of the enlightened man, allegedly. Men who do more work around the house than ever before, allegedly more present with their kids, even though their kids and their partner don't always agree. So for everyone listening, with Father's Day on the horizon, the lines are open, as I say, at 877-301-8970. How are you celebrating? If you're a dad, are you in that category of people who say, I'm doing much more than the dads of the prior generation are, or are you really going to golf and get drunk with the boys on Sunday? And if you're a partner or a kid in one of those relationships, is your perception of the sharing that the father in the family is doing equal what he thinks he actually is doing? And all the data, which we'll share with you in a minute, suggests the father's perception has a fairly large gap from the reality of what the father is actually doing. The number is 877-301-8970.
Well, Pew Research, and they're very reliable. We love their polling.
Yes, they are.
They say mothers in 2016 reported, that's a while ago, but not that long, reported devoting 14 hours a week on average to taking care of the children. I'm surprised it's that small. And fathers said 8 hours a week. But the gap has supposedly shrunk tremendously in the last century. It's not like it was back in 1965 when, dad went to the office and came home and
a week later.
That's right. And, all dads did was grill and golf and hold a Miller Lite. So things have improved, but it hasn't improved that much. But supposedly men are spending triple the time raising children that they used to, so that's a big improvement. Mothers tend not to see it that way. When you ask them, they don't seem to think, and I'm not sure kids think it's improved that much either. We have a little sound. We have several pieces of sound actually from Jimmy Kimmel's show. He goes out and asks about fathers and children's relationships on Father's Day. He does it. It's a bit he does every year, and this is one he did last night. I think it might have been a repeat, but it was very timely. Here's one where he goes out in the street and they talk to a father and a son passing by Kimmel's studio, and they ask the father and the son too questions about the kids. Here's a family being quizzed.
How old is the child? He is 29, 28.
Does your son have any allergies?
Not that I know of. You do.
Penicillin.
By the way, that was horrible sound. He says, how old is your kid? The father says 29, 28. The son says 27. Does your son have any allergies? Not that I know of. Son says penicillin. 877-301 89.7. We have more Kimmel coming up for you in a couple of minutes.
But the point is, they didn't know anything. They didn't know anything about the friends, or they didn't know anything about the kids whatsoever. That was the takeaway from that little interaction.
Without mentioning your immediate family, because you obviously have a daughter who is now married, has 2 kids, you know some of their friends. So let's talk about them. Do you find that the man in the relationship is sharing relatively equal the parental responsibilities in that family?
Well, I gotta say that the people I know that in their 20s and 30s now that have children, the fathers are much, much, much more involved. But that's because fathers in our day, or even 20 or 30 years ago, were almost not involved at all. So things have changed. Things have changed tremendously. Listen to this. When I was a kid in the 70s, my dad would come home from the office and we were not supposed to bother him or speak to him. He was completely hands off. He didn't go to our games. He didn't play catch in the yard. I love seeing how engaged dads are now, says Sean in Boston. And I think that was true. Dad went out to work, mom was supposed to be home taking care of everything, and dad might have needed a nap the moment he got home, or he needed a cocktail the moment he got home, and you're supposed to deliver him the newspaper and his slippers, and he was going to sit in his chair and relax with his cocktail.
Well, I mean, let's talk about, we have kids who are roughly the same age.
Yep.
Your oldest daughter is a little older. My kids are 31 and 33. When we would go to the playground, when they were little, the fathers generally had work on their laps, or when cell phones came into vogue, they were doing their cell phones, and the mother, for the most part, was chasing around
I'm surprised
the child.
The fathers were even there.
They were there. Well, in my case, my parents were divorced.
Cambridge, Jim.
And the most time I spent with my father, this is honest to God true, he wasn't around a lot, was when we would go to Atlantic City in the summer, where his sadistic mother spent the whole summer. That would be my grandmother on my father's side. Honest to God, the only time I'd spend with him is he'd walk with me hand in hand on the beach because he was convinced it would help him pick up women.
I think that
because he had a little boy holding onto his hand. That's an honest to God truth, by the way.
Absolutely true. I think sometimes I've been suspicious of men I see at the playground thinking, is this their kid? Or do they bring the kid for some kind of a prop? Anyway, Al from Rhode Island, what do you think? We'll start with you, Al.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
I think we're good, thank you.
Great. I just wanted to say, when my daughter was born, I was shoulder to shoulder with the doctor. Ever since then, we've been inseparable. And recently, she was told to do a Mother's Day gift for her mom, and she refused because she wanted to make a Daddy's Day gift, even on Mother's Day.
Wow. Do you know
wait a minute.
Do you know your kid's name?
Her name is Rihanna.
Well, that's a good sign, actually. How did the mother feel that on Mother's Day she wanted to make a gift for you, Al, rather than the mother? How'd that go?
Well, we've been separated for 3 years, and she's obviously not happy about it, but the fact that I have full custody now, it just goes to show that if you show your child love, and they'll always be with you. They'll always want to be with you because you're their safe place. You're their home. So that's why I'm calling in to let everyone out there know, if you're having a hard time as a dad, especially single dads out there, just keep striving, keep fighting for them, and they'll appreciate it for the rest of their lives.
Al, that is a pretty beautiful start to this conversation.
You are Dad of the Year. That was terrific.
Beautifully put.
Happy Father's Day to you.
Yeah, indeed, and I'm sure Rihanna appreciates it. Can we play a little more Jimmy Kimmel because
yes.
It's so great? So this is in July of 24. Kimmel asked fathers passing by his studio, as Marjorie said, to answer questions about their kids. You'll hear a father, then a son. Here's one father who struggles so much that Kimmel has to ask him about certain things more than once. Here it is.
Can you name your son's girlfriend?
Bianca? No.
Brielle?
No.
Brianna?
No.
Bobby, Bianca, Brielle? No, I said that.
I don't know any of those names.
Oh, okay. Brenna. Sound familiar? No. All right, just one more time. Can we get your son's girlfriend's name? Oh, I have no clue. Brielle? No. He just told you 2 minutes ago. I know. Rihanna? Brielle? No.
I love when the son in the middle says, I don't know anyone by any of those names.
It's great.
That is pretty great.
Yeah, that's one of the tests. Do you know the name of your kid's teacher? Do you know the name of your kid's pediatrician? Do you know their best friend? And when the fathers couldn't mention best friends, he said, do you know any of their friends' names? And they were like routinely embarrassed.
Read this great text,
all the
because this is
way.
what you said on the air a couple of days ago. Read that anonymous texter's text.
Oh, yeah. I was talking about how when I used to smoke cigarettes, and my father smoked cigarettes, he shouldn't have smoked cigarettes, neither should I, but we both did, and that was one of the things we used to do in the summertime. We'd say to me, let's have another cigarette, Margie, before we go inside.
So it's a bonding kind of thing,
Yeah, it was
right?
a bonding. And
bonding and lung cancer kind of thing,
it was
all
a
in
lung
one.
cancer. Well, he didn't. I don't think he got lung cancer. But anyway, but he was the typical father of, the 60s and 70s, where he left on a Sunday night or Monday morning, came back on Friday night. He was a traveling salesman, and that's what
Allegedly.
I
Okay.
think he was. I think he was a traveling salesman. But I think that was very typical, where the fathers were gone all week
He's
long.
going from Monday to Friday?
Yeah, he was a traveling
How'd
salesman.
your mother feel about that?
I think she said it was the secret to a happy marriage.
Let's go to Marina in, I don't know where you're calling from, but wherever it is, it's great to have you. Where are you calling from, Marina?
East Brookfield.
East Brookfield. Thanks. Great to have you. What's up?
Yes. Okay, so my dad was on a show called To Tell the Truth.
Oh, I remember.
that show?
Of course I do, yeah.
Okay. So they were trying to pick my dad, who was a contestant. At the time, he worked for Kennedy, and he was an Italian from Brooklyn, and there were no Italians from Brooklyn, so they knew they could stump the guests, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were 12 of us.
Wow.
One of 12 kids.
Wow.
At the time, I think my dad I think there were 9 of us at the time. And we were all sitting around watching TV, watching my dad on the show. And my mom was ironing, as she always was while we were watching. And, other contestants are allowed to lie, but my father always had to tell the truth. So they all asked, Kitty Carlisle started asking, what are your children's birthdays? So they asked contestant 1 and 3, which were the other people, and they, called off a bunch of fake names, fake face. They get to my father, who looked like a deer in a headlight, and he was, I have no idea.
So how did you and your siblings feel about that, Marina?
Well, we all burst out crying. We were all like, oh, my God, Daddy doesn't know our birthday. And then we kind of forgot about it because Kitty Carlisle was the only one who guessed my dad was the actual person. She said, I'll bet anyone as busy as you with your job has absolutely no idea what your kids' birthdays are.
Oh, my God, shut
so
up.
he won $750. So we got all excited that, oh, well, who cares? We're rich. And then my mother looked at us and said, he works for the government. We don't get to keep it.
Oh.
And then we burst out crying again.
What a hell of a
Marina,
story.
That's a great story.
Marina, thank you. To tell the truth.
Okay.
877-301-8970.
We have a lot of resentment out there in the texting world,
Oh,
Jim.
from kids?
Yeah. One of my father's favorite gifts is that I hate staying home on Sunday because all we did when kids was sit at home on Sunday while my father watched Formula One and soccer all day long. Thanks, Dad. And then I'm almost 50. My father was a clone of the dad from the Wonder Years. He would come home from work, take a broom from the garage, and take a path through our toys to his chair. He also wasn't 100% sure where our elementary school was.
That is just unbelievable.
But Kate says times have changed, so she thinks things are a little bit better than they were before. And then we have another texter who says, problem is mothers are held to a standard of perfection while carrying much of the burden of bearing and raising the children. Kids also come to mom for everything. Moms are also working professionals and still always available. Meanwhile, dads just have to do a little better than their dads to get like the pat on the back. So I'll tell the story I've told a million times.
Which one?
Well, I think if you're a woman working, it's a little bit better now. You can admit you have children now if you have a full-time professional job as a woman. You didn't used to be able, you used to have to kind of hide the kids. They didn't really exist. And so you'd make up these excuses, if your kid had a doctor's appointment, you had a root canal, or if your kid was going to be starring in the school play, you were getting a colonoscopy or some crazy thing like that. But remember all during the time he was running for governor, Charlie Baker would talk about how he took the afternoon to go see his kid's soccer game, how he took the afternoon off to go something. And people said, wow.
What a man.
What a great guy he is. And there's Jane Swift, 3 kids under 3, like a 3-hour commute. Her first kid is an infant and is very sick, and she's freaking out because it's her first child. And I don't know if she had a lot of confidence in her husband there, so she takes a helicopter home, and we never heard the end of it. That Jane Swift rushed home to see her baby.
Okay, here's a quiz I think you'll know the answer to, even though you hate quizzes.
Mm-hmm.
To my recollection, every columnist in the Boston papers trashed her for taking the helicopter with one exception. Who was the one exception?
Well, that was I, because I knew.
That was I, or that was me?
Well, it is. That was I.
That was I?
Nobody says that. That
was I?
Yes.
Okay, fine. That was I.
Is to not take an object.
That was her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incorrect too, but that's okay.
That was Marjorie.
Okay.
That was
okay.
she? Is that the correct
yes,
thing?
But nobody says it that way
Okay,
anymore.
okay.
But the point is,
What is the point?
I knew that if I had a 4-month-old with 105 fever, 3 hours away, and I had a chance to get there on a helicopter, and I was the governor of the Commonwealth, I do it and pay the price.
Weren't we then, and I think now, either the only state in the
Yes.
country or one of the only 2
Yes.
that didn't have a governor's mansion? So she kept their house in Western Massachusetts. Had there been a governor's residence, she would have lived there with a kid and the husband, or at least with the kids.
Listen to this. When I was a new lawyer in 1996, the founding partner of my law firm told us that when his wife had their baby, he just dropped her off at the hospital, went to court, spent the whole day arguing his case in court, and then saw the baby at the end of the day when the baby was all swathed and wrapped up in the nursery at the hospital.
That's beautiful.
That's a good one. 877-301-8970. It's Mahesh from Westford.
Mahesh, I think.
Mahesh, I'm sorry.
I think. Hi.
That's Mahesh from Westboro. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. So I come from a different part of the world. I've settled here with my family here now.
Mm-hmm.
But back where I grew up, it was a joint family. Right? So we were 12 people under one roof. My grandfather, my grandfather's brother, my father, my uncle, and then the next generation of kids like me, my brother, my sister, and my cousin. Right? So each one had a role to play. And my mom and my aunts, they were housewives. My dad and my uncle, they were the ones who were the earning members of the family. My grandfather had retired. My grandfather brought me up, right? I mean, I look at him for everything, right? For anything. Like if I have doubts in my math or science or anything, I go back to my grandfather, right? We didn't have the money, and whatever money that my dad and uncle had brought, it was my mom and aunt who had to actually make sure they were able to feed the entire family of 12 people.
Yeah.
You know, where are you from, Mahesh? Where are you from?
I'm from down south in India, Chennai.
You know, one of the horrible things in this country, and much of Asia has a similar sort of thing, this intergenerational thing. We don't have any of that in this country. And the more I read about it, my kids were both born in China, where there's a lot of that also. I mean, how do you feel about that after the fact as an adult, about how that...
I think that added a lot of value. I mean, between 2021 and 22, within 6 months time period, my uncle and my dad, they both passed away all of a sudden. And then all of us were there to take care of each other, right? I mean, we didn't let go of my cousin, or my cousin didn't let go of us, right? So that bonding still continues into the next generation, even though we are not a joint family. That does bring a lot of value, though.
Yeah, that was a fabulous call yet again. Mahesh, call us again. That was great. I love that. We should talk about multi-generational families someday on the show.
Well, you know, it makes your life a lot easier. Listen to this. The truth is hybrid work has allowed fathers to be more present than ever, but there's still a large part of the work being done by the mothers, even if they are the breadwinners of the family. I definitely see dads doing a lot more, though, and they'll argue they're doing 60 to 75% of the work now. I'm not sure this person believes that, because the truth is the extended family help is different from family to family, and ultimately everything is left to 2 people, which is just too much for them to handle if they both work full time and try to keep up with everything. And that's really so true. I think you find, I mean, as I've said so many times, I mean, you know, I was a big fan of Gloria Steinem, but Gloria Steinem never had any kids. And the idea that she thought you could just kind of divide everything and it would be fine turned out to be true, because you know, there's only 24 hours in a day, and if mom is working 9 or 10 hours and dad is working 9 or 10 hours, you're kind of in a difficult situation. Everybody needs a wife, you know, that's the problem.
You know what I don't know, as long as I've known you, were your grandparents around when you were a kid?
I lived with my grandfather till he was 9.
I didn't
till I was
know
9.
that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But he was never there either.
Whose father was that?
My mother's father.
What, was he a traveling salesman too?
No. He was a 4th grade dropout who started his own company and Irish guy, did well.
So why wasn't he around? Because he was working?
Because he was working. Because he was working, yeah.
Okay, Jenny in the car. Hi, welcome to the show. We're talking about Father's Day, which happens to be Sunday. Hello there.
Hi, guys. Happy Friday.
And to you.
So luckily, my husband and I feel like have a pretty even division of responsibilities in terms of like the house and the kids and all that good stuff. But anytime I try to like throw him a bone mentally or sort of feel guilty about maybe I'm not doing my share, I try to 100% fully suppress those feelings of guilt because it's like pure role reversal from the last 50 however many years of the women sort of always feeling guilty, and the men, never doing enough. So anytime I feel like, oh gosh, he's really pulling his weight, or maybe I'm slacking this week, I just fully repress it and I say, nope, I'm working hard, and everybody's, doing the best they can.
I love that. I love that.
That was really good.
I mean, it's sort of analogous to the story Marjorie said about Governor Baker, as he deserved great plaudits for doing what virtually every mother had been doing for centuries.
No.
Jenny, that was great.
I have a son-in-law. I can't believe how much he does. I'm in awe.
Your son-in-law?
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
Well, they are a modern, from what I understand, they're a pretty modern couple, aren't they? Yeah.
So here's some more sound from Jimmy Kimmel. This is when he's asking fathers questions about their kids again for Father's Day. And this one features a father who couldn't answer questions about his daughter. However, he was an expert on something else.
What is your daughter's favorite band?
Fish.
No.
How many of your daughter's teachers can you name?
None.
Okay.
How many members of the band Fish can you name?
Trey Anastasio, Paige McCall, John Fishman, and Mike Gordon. And their mighty guy is Chris Caruta. He's the 5th member of Fish.
That can't be right.
Yeah, they had another guy too, because I watched this whole thing. Yeah, he was with his 2 sons. And he didn't know anything about his sons. He didn't know who their friends were. He didn't know who their best friends were. Didn't know where their school was or anything else. And they asked him about some sports team, and he named like all 12 of them, including the coach. It was
great.
It was
He
unbelievable.
just named the lighting guy for Fish.
Exactly.
Pretty good. Rob in Andover, welcome to the show. Hi.
Good to be here. Good to be back on. I hope you're having a great Friday.
We are. Thank you for asking.
So a comment about dad.
Yep.
And I think the way to be a great dad, aside from being a role model, is how you treat your kid's mom. And so we've raised a couple of boys, and I wanted them to be gentlemen, not to be jerks. And so I just treated their mother just incredibly well. And guess what? They're treating their girlfriends and their future wives incredibly well. Why more guys don't do this is beyond me. And so the burden goes on the guys to take care of everybody, but you got to be the role model for taking care of the mom, whether you're married or divorced.
Sounds like you thought a lot about that. Rob,
that
thanks.
is a wonderful call, Rob. Thank you very much.
It was a really
yeah,
good thing.
and you know what? Another one of the theories is that the better dads come from families with more sisters.
That's believable.
Yeah, that was the Tom
Yeah.
Brady school of thought. That's why people thought he was a good dad.
Have I ever talked to you about my sisters?
You don't have any sisters.
Oh, I don't. That's
you don't
right.
You don't have any brothers
Yeah.
either. Okay. When my mom was pregnant with me, says a texter, it was her first pregnancy, and she was at a basketball game that my dad was coaching. She went into labor, and Dad decided instead of continuing the game while the wife was in labor, he actually had the assistant coach take over. Yes. Oh no, I have it backwards. Listen to this. Oh no. When my mom went into labor, my dad decided to send the assistant coach to her
that is not true.
to the hospital so he could keep coaching the game.
That's a great one.
Oh my God. I had that is really.
Well, he did have to coach the
He
game.
had to keep coaching. He had to keep coaching the game. Well, that always happens in the football games, you know. Remember, somebody's going to have a baby. The baby's going into their mother's in labor, and they got a big NFL game, and it's always a big dispute on talk radio. Lots of times they go really after these guys that decided to go with the mother to have the baby instead of playing the game.
You know what I just realized? Actually, a local version of this is the manager of the Red Sox.
Yep.
His daughter, I believe, graduated from BC a few months ago.
Oh, yes.
And he took a day off. and the most popular sports talk show host in Boston, Michael Felger.
Yeah,
who
Michael
used to work
Felger.
at the Boston
Yep,
Herald,
yep,
right,
yep,
in the
yep.
old days. On the afternoon show on the Sports Hub, apparently went nuts on him that the team should come first. And the good thing was, it wasn't statistically provable, but it seemed like the overwhelming percentage of even sports fans believe that the manager did the right thing. Obviously, what comes first is your daughter's graduation.
Yeah,
It's
that
never gonna
caused a
happen
big
again.
uproar.
It was a big deal.
I don't listen
just
to
a
sports.
month ago.
Yeah, I'm not a big sports radio person, but I heard about that. It must have been reported in the paper somewhere because
It
I read
was
about
everywhere.
that.
Can you imagine not going to your kids? I mean, well, I guess the answer is you can.
I don't know. I don't know what the rules are like in professional sports teams. Do Red Sox players get to take the day off to go with their wife to have a baby?
Well, I would bet that manager would say yes to them, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. But anyway,
Okay,
I
we have
remember
time for at least one more.
Felger got some criticism for that,
He
I
did.
guess. Paige in Hull. Hi, Paige.
Hi, Paige. Talking about Father's Day. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just calling in to. Oh, sure. I just wanted to say that my husband is much more involved than either of our fathers were. So I just wanted to share some positivity there. That
good.
I would say that they are still not equal with mothers, but a million times better than what we experienced growing up.
And why has he decided to break with family tradition? What's the motivation of your husband, as best you know?
I think that he just, I don't know. He's a good guy. He wants to be there with his kids and be a part of it. I will say that I think that the parental leave getting better makes a big impact, because when we had our third child, he got to stay home about twice as long as he did with the first two children, and he felt so much more connected and had such a harder time going back to work, and even since then has really ramped up his involvement. So I think the more opportunity they get and they get to feel that love coming back to them, it makes a big impact.
That's
on
a
them.
good analysis. I wish we'd thought of that. Thank you, Paige, much for the call. What are you laughing about?
Just one more I want to sneak in here. Okay, this texter is writing in and says, we had 4 kids. This is the mom.
Yeah.
I had a chance to go away for the weekend, and all the other moms were, oh, your poor husband, Tom. He's home with the 4 kids. She says, they brought him all this food. Where were they when I was home alone with the 4 kids? That's a good one, too.
How about your upbringing there, Jared Bowen? Equality
Father's
of
Day.
parental...
Yeah, did they divide it up, or did your mom do everything and Dad sat on the couch and read his book or newspaper and had his cocktail?
He's thinking before he answers, which
Yeah.
means that may not be 100% true.
Because if they're not listening, there's people are reporting back.
That's right.
I would say, well, he knows his mom did about 90%.
Uh-huh.
So-
Yeah. Well, I think that was the fathers of our generation,
Yeah.
right? They were doing
Yeah.
90%. They were at work,
Yeah.
and Mom was doing everything.
They were out creating fire and inventing the wheel and doing all that stuff.
That's right.
What was the
That's right.
fabulous movie? I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier. Alan Arkin sitting in the back seat with his grandson. Is it about beauty pageants?
Sunshine.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he turns to his grandson and he says, Dwayne, that's your name, right? And then he says the next sentence he can't repeat on the radio. He gave him a little advice about women.
Yeah.
Dwayne, that's your name, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
whenever my father says, hey, you, I know,
Exactly.
I know what's happening there. Which child?
Okay, so what are you doing on the show there?
So we're going to be talking, obviously, we all know it was a huge loss in the music world this week. So we're talking
Yeah.
about Brian Wilson and Sly Stone.
Sly Stone.
And it's so interesting. They died at the same age and coming up at the same era, yet obviously distinctly different artistic viewpoints.
And a lot of struggles, too, in
A
their
lot of
lives.
struggles, yeah.
Both of them.
Did you ever
yes.
see the movie Woodstock?
I think I've seen pieces of it. I've
Let me
never
tell
seen
you,
watched
Sly
the whole
Stone,
thing.
I wish I had been there, but Sly Stone in that movie is about as spectacular a performances you'll ever see in your whole life. It's just unbelievable.
You're about the only person to say you weren't there. Everybody else says, oh, I
That's
was
right.
there.
There were
Excuse me.
5 million
I
people.
was working 5 miles away at Grossinger's. Everybody in the whole hotel lied and called in. This is so embarrassing. You know why I didn't go? I said, it's raining. It's going to be so sloppy, so crappy. So that is, I was literally within arm's reach. Okay, what are you doing? Oh, you said what you're doing
Yeah,
on the show.
and
That's
then
enough.
and smoking is back. Did you know this?
We did. We talked about it yesterday. Had you
that's
listened to
right.
our show, you would have known that.
Well, you know, I have my own show to prepare
Well,
for. So
I would prepare
I'm
a little
so
less
sorry.
and listen a little more. You have anything else you want to say?
No, I'm done.
It's nice to see you.
Okay.
That's Jared Bowen. And
That's
the
Jared
Culture
Bowen.
Show is exactly 3 minutes and 7 seconds away. I wouldn't miss it if I were you.
Did you see Jen from Mansfield?
Nope.
Who wrote in to say she and her husband were able to do 50-50, but they had a reason for it. They are unionized professional employees, a chance at work-life balance, generous sick leave, and decent vacation time. We had security in our family and relationship because of our unionized jobs.
You want to
There you go,
badmouth
Jim.
the teachers union now or no?
No, I will not
Okay,
badmouth the
good.
teachers union. There are a lot of other unions that are not the teachers union, Jim.
I understand.
I'm a big union fan.
Teachers union does that too. Makes that possible too, you know.
They're not from the teachers union. I'll tell you that right
You
now.
are really
They're not.
incorrigible.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you very
everybody.
much for
Thank
listening
you.
to another edition of Boston Public Radio. And
Thanks
keep up
for
with us.
coming,
Thank you for
everybody.
coming down to the library. Keep up with us 24/7. By way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. On Monday, I'm going to be joined by political commentator Anand Girdadas. He is a brilliant guy. I can't wait to talk to him again. Lisa Thoreau and Kristen Wheeler from the Cambridge-based nonprofit Strategies for Children on Juvenile Justice Reform. And Lucy Whiteman, she is out with a new memoir about her life as Boston's most famous stripper. You've probably heard of her, Princess Cheyenne.
By the way, she's a longtime friend of both of
Yep,
ours.
she is.
She is spectacular, and the book, which is coming out Tuesday, is totally spectacular.
We're also going to be joined by the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price III. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John McClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Guy, Patrick Lally, Bill Francis, Juan, Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen is going to start right after we do an 89.7 GBH. I hope if you go to the protest tomorrow, it's a great day for you. Pride protest, the No Kings protest, whatever it is. And hope you have a good weekend. I'm Marjorie Egan.
And Marjorie wanted to do a shout out to the members of the Teachers Union. She forgot, so I'll do it. I'm Jim Browdy. Have a great weekend. See you on Monday. Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Insurance coverage from healthcare experts for businesses, individuals, families, and retirees. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Learn more at mgbhp.org/everyday. Andrea Bocelli is the most successful classical crossover artist in popular music, so he's joined by Ed Sheeran, Shania Twain, and others to celebrate his 30-year career on great performances. Andrea Bocelli, 30th, The Celebration. Tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. Coming up today, we celebrate and remember music legends. Starting with the man who turned sun-kissed dreams of California into a soundtrack that defined a 1960s behind the Beach Boys has died. And Sly Stone, there was nothing every day about his music.
A whole bunch of micro ideas inside of one 3-minute song, and that's the genius of Sly Stone.
From there, Misty Copeland hangs up her ballet shoes. She's retiring after an historic run as American Ballet Theater's first black female principal dancer.
The legacy of what I've created in terms of carrying so many stories of black dancers who have come before me, like I can't just disappear. I think there has to be an official closing to my time at American Ballet Theater.
Then Big Tobacco is back.
For the taste that you like, light up a lucky strike.
Pop culture is bringing smoking back into style. From the new film Materialists to The Bear, everyone is lighting up.
Relax. It's light up time.
Lucky Strikes is toasted.
Now that Congress has weighed in on budget cuts, what is the financial future of public media?
Show me the money! Show me the money! Show me the money!
And President Trump and J.D. Vance attended a production of Les Mis at the Kennedy Center and were met with cheers, F-bombs, booze, and a posse of drag queens. We take on that and more right now on our Arts and Culture Week in Review.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Welcome to The Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I'm Edgar B. Herwick III.
We're going over the week's top arts and culture headlines, starting with Brian Wilson, the genius behind the Beach Boys, died this week at age 82. He was known for channeling the sun-drenched California surfing scene into songs that, on the surface, were upbeat. But those good vibrations belied complex vocal harmonies and rhythmic texture. And for Wilson himself, real life was anything but the California fun mythology. So this was obviously huge. And we'll be talking about Sly Stone in a moment. And it's so interesting to think of these two men dying in the same week, the same age, and both coming from very different, drastically different artistic viewpoints and carving out an indelible path in music. Edgar, let's go to you because you chose the song. Tell us what we just heard coming in from the Beach Boys and why you chose it.
So we heard a little bit of Let 'Em Run Wild, which was the B-side to California Girls. And I wanted to play this because I think in the aftermath of Brian Wilson's death, I think a lot of people, God Only Knows and other songs from Pet Sounds in particular have kind of been out there in the ether. But this is one where I feel like this is a single, the intro to California Girls in particular, than the song itself, and then this song, the B-side, which I think is not quite as well remembered. To me, this is as important of a single as the Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields single was from the Beatles, which kind of predated what was going to happen on Sgt. Pepper for the Beatles. I think in the same way, this single sort of put a signal shot out there about what Pet Sounds was going to be about, which was just an incredible album in the mid to late 1960s. So that's why I wanted to just have a little moment of that song. And I could go on and on and on about Brian Wilson, so I'm just going to say, Callie, why don't you say something now so that I don't just sit here and talk and talk and talk.
Well, I'm going to say something I've never said out loud before. I didn't know that he wrote God Only Knows until Love Actually.
No, but you know what, though?
And Love Actually really cemented that song for me because so many people covered it.
But I think also not for you alone. So it's interesting because that song, which is again, I think that has been the one that has been sort of cited the most and has been out there in the ether the most since his passing, and it's probably one of, if not the most popular of their songs now. But when it came out, it was also the B-side of a single. It only charted at like 38 here in the U.S. It was not a huge hit, and one of the reasons it became a hit over time, there are a bunch of moments along the way. One of them is Love Actually using it. I think that really brought it into a larger public consciousness.
Oh, my God, I just cry when somebody sings it. I love that song so much.
Well, I think it's also interesting about, it's so many of these artistic geniuses, and we hear the word genius so applied to Brian Wilson that it takes a long time to understand the magnitude of what they're doing because people didn't necessarily appreciate it in the moment. Now we all look at his songs, we hear his songs, and we hear all the different layers, and whether it's something that resonates emotionally or technically, you start to realize what he was doing. What was one of the songs at the time, was it Good Vibrations, was likely the most expensive song recorded at the time because of all of the engineering prowess that went into it, all of the thinking, all of the layers,
they're using
all of the
theremin.
Sounds, right, which is so bizarre.
Yeah,
but I just want to say, but then the simplest thing about the songs that I did know that they wrote and sang were the harmonies. Yeah. That harmony was
family sound.
I just love the crispness of it, the deepness. I love harmonies anyway.
Yeah.
And so some people have referred to it as kind of a barbershop harmony thing. I don't know if it's that, but that really brought something to all of the rest of what was technically his technical prowess, and then just the songs in general.
Yeah, I mean, the harmony thing, I think, is obviously, I mean, that's one of the most influential things. And I think Barbershop is fair because that's certainly one of the serious strains, like, in the background there. And, it should be noted, the Beach Boys, that was a family band. They were a number of brothers, including a cousin, Mike Love. And so there's that family harmony thing in a musical family now, a complex family with a complex father. I want to just say something about the Genius thing, because I think it's really interesting that this Genius label, which is applied to him, and by the way, was also and has been applied to Sly Stone, and I think apt a little bit in both cases. But in Brian Wilson's case, it's interesting. Derek Taylor, who was the Beatles PR man, he got kind of brought in the '60s to sort of get the Beach Boys kind of out of the surf thing and to, have some of the cachet of the Beatles. And he really pushed this Genius thing, and it stuck. Now, it stuck for a reason, because I think there is something to it, but I think about this word genius. And, back in the day, the initial sort of meaning of the word genius, it wasn't something somebody was, right? A genius was like an angel, so to speak, or a bit of like magic that could be on your shoulder, and you could have a moment of genius. You weren't necessarily a genius. And in that regard, I think that meaning of the word genius is very apt for Brian Wilson, because regardless of was he a genius or just a great craftsman, I think there was this thing where he was reaching for some sort of pure, innocent spirituality in his music. And that has that old sense of genius to it. So I think it's sort of accidentally apt.
And also the vibe of the place of California where they're from. I am taken with a quote from his brother Dennis. Brian Wilson is the Beach Boys. He is all of it, period. We're nothing. He's everything. Because he wanted to make clear that they sang it, but he was the guy that really thought about it.
That's also like a poor younger brother.
Come on. I
He's like,
believe him.
It's all my older brother Brian. Like, he's the Beach Boys.
Okay, let's not have a little session here today, Edgar.
Well, I'm the oldest brother in my family, so it's all okay.
I mean, it's almost impossible in succeeding generations to also go to California and not have a sense. Of course, they were encapsulating things that they were seeing, but they put it into a language that we now all understand, and you'll be challenged, present week aside, wildfires aside, to move and go to Los Angeles or anywhere in California without having that sort of sensibility and just your shoulders dropping, maybe looking out at the water and
thinking
just
about
enjoying.
surfing, which Brian didn't do, by the way.
Dennis did, though. Dennis did.
True.
He was the only surfer in the group.
Because it was an exceptionally tough week in music, and so we remember another legend, Sly Stone, the visionary funk frontman of Sly and the Family Stone, who also died at age 82. He was known for fusing jazz, soul, psychedelic rock, and gospel. Like Brian Wilson, he had his own host of struggles, and his upbeat music grew darker and more cynical as the years went on. I want to circle back to, so I'll go last in this case, because I want to talk about the image he created, which I found really fabulous and fascinating and enduring, as so many people have talked about. But Callie, I know you helped pick this song that we were coming in on because, of course, again, as we were saying before, defined an entire generation and beyond.
He really wanted to get to, the music sounds poppy and up and bright, but his lyrics and his themes were always about getting together, collaborating. He was really, really intent on the black and white thing coming together. Yeah. He got criticized hugely for having white members of his band. And one of them said, I can't tell you how many times he was like, I'm not hearing this criticism. Stop it. This guy is going to be in my band, period. And his lyrics spoke to that. He really wanted people to come together. And I like Stan for some of the words that you just heard, but I mean, think about it right now in this moment. Stand for the things you know are right. It's the truth that the truth makes them so uptight. Stand all the things you want are real. You have to complete, and there is no deal. I mean, he was just, he was about these themes and wanting people to really get to the heart of themselves. That's why something like Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again is a popular song. I mean, I just love that. And what I really love about their whole story is, think about them first being represented by Motown. That is wild
Yeah.
to even think about.
I know.
And he came out of the gospel church.
Yes,
Even wilder to think about, although so
wild.
many people did and go off in different directions. So I lied. Before we go to you,
Yeah,
Edgar,
no.
let's hear a little bit of Brian Wilson. This was interesting when we found this week. Here's a clip from the 2021 documentary Brian Wilson, Long Promised Road, where he talks about the time Sly Stone crashed on his couch.
Sly from the Family Stone came aboard?
What? Okay, you gotta tell me about that.
I remember, I just know he fell asleep on the couch. I think he was snorting cocaine.
And he fell asleep?
Yeah.
Did he come over to party or to record or just to visit?
Just to visit.
What was the vibe?
Jerry Melcher brought him over
Okay.
to visit.
Sly seemed like a cool cat.
Who, Sly?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was good.
Oh, yeah.
Had fun in the summertime.
Oh, man.
Agreed.
Heavy duty.
So fabulous to hear this intersection.
You know, it's interesting. I was going to bring up Terry Melcher, who's a connection point with these two. And on the one level, you're absolutely right, Jerry, where you're talking about they're kind of coming from these two different musical traditions. But there is, I guarantee you, there should be a podcast, like a multi-episode podcast, and looking at these two figures who are actually more closely aligned than I think people realize. They're both in California, you know, and Sly Stone in particular, like before he was making music, right? He was a DJ at a record place. He was DJ at a radio station. He was producing records mainly for white bands. I think Jim mentioned him playing at his set at Woodstock is like unbelievable.
Yes.
And so this mixing of white and black music at that time was a fluid place. And Terry Melcher is a fascinating character that connects these two. He worked with the Beach Boys and stuff. He's Doris Day's son, and apparently there's this crazy story where apparently Sly Stone was hanging out with him for a while, and he loved Que Sera Sera, right? Doris Day,
right.
and she was there, and apparently they played it at Terry Melcher's house together on the piano. I mean, it's nuts. The 60s in California, man. I would have been really, really cool.
People should take a listen to that. We don't have it to play today, but they should listen to his Que Sera Sera, because when I was referencing in the introduction that his music became gradually not as upbeat and utopian as we heard earlier in his career, that's what he did to that song. You think of Doris Day singing and it's bright and it's airy and it's beautiful. He gives it a very different narrative twist on it. Speaking of narrative twists, look at the way he conducted himself, which I thought was really fascinating. He would often either not show up for a concert or leave early. He dressed the part. I mean, this is what I appreciate about somebody like this, is that it was like no holds barred with him in terms of how he dressed, with the big platform shoes and the hair and the metallic and the lame and the fringe. He carved out this identity, and especially when you go back to those early days when he was a disc jockey or when he was a kid, again, growing up in the gospel church, to what he became and what he very deliberately created. And then this winding path through life where there were rumors that he was living in an RV and just what
struggling
happened
with
to his
addiction.
life. Exactly.
Which
of the three of us waited for 3 hours for Sly Stone? Oh, that would be me.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
When I went to concerts.
Where
and
was that?
It was a
Anywhere?
party. I can't remember where I was. It was a party.
I will say, and another really it's interesting that in that sound that we just heard from Brian Wilson, that he brings up Hot Fun in the Summertime.
Yes.
Callie and I were listening to that today. I'm in love with that song,
I
too.
love it,
And
too.
it never really dawned on me until today when we were listening to it before the show, Callie. The opening chords of that song sound like they're straight out of Pet Sounds. It is like the surf rock of the era.
Yeah.
There's a little wink there, and it's a song about summertime when that sound was synonymous with summertime. That is certainly not accidental, and again speaks to the way these sort of genres of music, especially at this period of time, were talking to each other. It's fascinating.
It's amazing.
And in both cases, never went out of fashion. We
Right.
still hear
Yeah.
all those. Who was just telling me that I think maybe, well, I don't want to say on the air who it was, but somebody just was walking her son down the aisle to God Only Knows.
Oh,
So, I mean,
I love that
this just
song.
lives and
Yeah,
lives
yeah,
and
yeah,
lives.
yeah.
It's not like something that we revisit every now and again. It has never left us, the songs in
That's
either
right.
case. Well, we had our own sizable loss here in Boston in a man who is central to the region's arts and culture landscape, literally as an acclaimed architect and figuratively as a philanthropist who bolstered the arts. Graham Gund has died. I will say he was a friend, is a friend. It feels hard to say past tense. Doesn't make sense to say past tense, actually, but I, of course, covering the arts, got to know the Guns, Anne and Graham Gund, very, very well. And he was such a dear, dear person who grew up going, this is why I'm so full throttle about free museum admission, although his family had means, but he grew up going to museums, and the arts were ingrained in him from a very early age, went on to become an extraordinary architect. You can see his work all over the world. We'll show you some of his images if you're watching on our GBH News YouTube channel, or here at the library. You'll see that this was a building that was later turned into the ICA, this former police building and public works building. He also created 75 State Street, the design for that, this Art Deco. Actually, we've just bounced to that. Yeah. I'm getting a little tongue-tied because it's still so surreal to talk about. But also the headquarters for the Boston Ballet here in our region, to say nothing of the campus he ultimately really designed and helped redesign for Kenyon College. But because of that lifelong interest in the arts, they are great, great philanthropists in this community.
I got to know him a little bit, not as close as you. I always think of them as Ann and Graham, just one name. And what I loved about him, and of course about Ann, is that they're not precious about, they're big collectors, but they're not precious about it. They're so enthused about the work and the artists, and their enthusiasm about the pieces they own and then what they support out in the community is really, literally contagious. And that, that's what you want in a community that appreciates art, and from a guy who is himself an artist in another genre. So it's a huge loss for a couple of reasons, not just for the work he himself did, but also for his life, really feels like lifelong support of the arts.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, as you mentioned, Jared, it was, he came from a family of means, but the idea that if you come from a family of means, you're then going to be somebody who pays it forward and be a philanthropist is not fait accompli, right? It's not written in stone. And so you have to take a moment when somebody does that and say, hey, all right, good job. The other thing is, there's a quote from Robert Campbell, Boston Globe architect critic, who in 1989 called him quite possibly the most playful architect of any importance in the history of the United States.
I love that.
Now that's that is saying something. Yeah. That is really, really cool. And I get the sense when you read about him, you look at the buildings he's worked on, I think about, something, I'm going to make an analogy to filmmaking, and I think of somebody like Christopher Nolan, right? And when Christopher Nolan does a movie, and he's done his sort of small bespoke movies, he's done big blockbusters, but you always get the sense that he's picked it carefully, that there's something personal in it, that there's some mix of modern and timeless in it. And that is true of Graham Gunda as an architect. There's this sense that there is something personal in there, and that there is this sort of facility and knowledge of the history of architecture that's kind of coming out in that somehow. And I think that's really special.
And what's special is it's here for us to see.
Exactly, and as is the legacy of philanthropy. We can't understate it. The Guns gave about 80 works of art to Kenyon College, his alma mater, to really seed a foundation for arts and a museum there, and so that there could be a great contemporary art collection on that campus. If you go to the Museum of Fine Arts here, you go to the Anne and Graham Gund Gallery, where you see special exhibitions. They endow the director position. I mean, they believe so fervently in the arts and want to make sure that everybody else has access to these great arts. As you said, Kelly, they were great collectors, are great collectors, but make sure that they share this. This is not simply for themselves. And to go back to your point, Edgar, we don't see that from everyone of means who is so generous in thinking about community as they have their lives, and realizing the position they have in a community, or many communities in this case, to make a difference. And we love that it's around the arts in this case.
I mean, the other thing I just got to say is, thinking about this in the context of what we were just talking about, like the music of those two men and work like this kind of architectural work, it's easy to look at these things because it feels like they're there and they've always been around, but you do have to step back and marvel that like somebody made that, and these are people who made these things that just feel like they are part of nature, but they're not. They were made by people.
Well, coming up, smoke screens, how cigarettes are making a comeback in TV and movies. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
When Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss served in the Marines, he commanded infantry based at 29 Palms, the same desert base where the Marines now deployed to LA were stationed. I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, the congressman talks about why he thinks the deployment is illegal, immoral, and just a bad idea. Also on the Joy Beat, remembering the legacy of Sly Stone. All today starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And American Repertory Theater, with the hit musical rom-com Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. The Boston Globe calls it clever, funny, and delightfully surprising. Now playing. amrep.org. And Boston Landmarks Orchestra, presenting a Juneteenth celebration, a free concert Saturday, June 14th at 3 at Kroc Center, featuring Deshaun Gordon King on flute. Registration at landmarksorchestra.org.
Elevate your brand and support local journalism with a GBH sponsorship. Your custom sponsorship package can include audio, video, digital, and events. Learn more at gbh.org/sponsorship.
From documentaries to in-depth conversations with local leaders, GBH News is your home for trusted local news. Listen on GBH 89.7 or watch on the GBH News YouTube channel.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. There is no end in sight for the It Ends With Us legal saga. This week, Justin Baldoni's defamation suit against Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds was dismissed. But Baldoni and his lawyers say they will continue to fight. That's also the case for Blake Lively. Her attorney told CNN that she's determined to see her claims through. So if you have no idea what we're talking about, you have no idea what we're talking about. But this is because we have not talked about this on the Culture Show because we didn't even know how to dive into it. But here, let us try to
give us the Cliff
Notes.
Yeah.
So Blake Lively made this movie that co-starred Justin Baldoni. He was also the director. After the filming, she talked about allegations of abuse and mistreatment on the set. Then he countered with his own suit, saying that he was trying to exploit her, essentially, and then it began taking all of these twists and turns, even him having a subpoena for Taylor Swift, who is a friend of Blake Lively, because he wanted to prove that there was a conspiratorial nature to this. So one is claiming the other is defaming themselves, and it goes back and forth, and this has been consuming Hollywood. But we decided to dive into it this week because this was the first moment where there seemed to be something definitive, where a judge in this case threw out the defamation suit by Justin Baldoni, presumably endorsing some of the arguments made by Blake Lively.
Well, what the judge said was that his claims of extortion didn't work because she was within the boundaries of her ability to say these things happened to me and I can sue for them. And so his claims of this was extortion just didn't fit.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that he couldn't come back with something else as he's promised as a way into this. I think there's a couple of ironies here. The name of the film they were working on is called
true.
It Ends With Us.
I know, it's so
true. But some people have called It Never Ends.
Yeah.
Because it's been going on and on and on.
It ends with you and a number of
and the rest of
lawyers
us.
and the judges.
And Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is, these are very serious concerns, and it's a lot of bad blood that has divided people in Hollywood around this. This, in some ways, is an extension of the kind of movement that started with the Harvey Weinstein. He just was back in court again this week, being approved. Got off for one thing and then was accused of something else. But the point is that this is an ongoing, not only conversation, but there are a lot of lawsuits happening and situations like this that don't necessarily come to the fore, but these are fairly big stars, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of absolutely don't want to underplay the fact that, like, one of the things in here is sexual harassment is one of the allegations here, and that bit of it needs to be taken as seriously as it possibly can. The back and forth that has kind of happened in the aftermath and the suing and the counter-suing and the Blake, all these other people getting involved, feels a little, it makes me feel like I'm in high school and these are like the popular, very good looking kids who I kind of know, and I sort of know that there's some sort of beef between them, but I don't 100% know what's going on. Like, that's what it feels like to me. It feels like it's really diminishing to all people involved, it seems to me.
And it's so deeply embedded. This is what I always think, this is why I love movies and I love Hollywood and the whole notion of it. Speaking of California Dreamin' and the myths, you know, it's really not all that. It never has been. But Taylor Swift becomes involved, and then so is Scott Scooter Brown, who co-owns the PR firm that was representing Baldoni, but who also bought the Taylor Swift catalog that she bought back recently. So this is so deeply layered, and it's tough to make any sense of this. But as you say, it's dividing Hollywood right now, and it seems that there are factions, and nobody knows where to come down. Not that it's their role to.
And I'll make this observation. Taylor Swift's attorney is not playing with y'all.
Well, no. So I was going to say,
yes, for him to say, "Oh no."
Yeah, and I was going to say, I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Taylor Swift got drawn into this in Baldoni's countersuit, which is what was just dismissed.
That's right.
So, like, at the end of the day, the story here is Taylor Swift is more famous than anybody else, and she is not going to get drawn into something that she doesn't want to get drawn into.
Her attorney had already said
she's got the power.
Before this thing got dismissed, don't come for us.
Yeah. I mean,
well, already I just feel icky talking about it. So let's move on. Speaking of moving on from legal smoke screens to smoking on screen, it seems lighting up is smoking hot once again. Cigarettes have made a comeback. In music, movies, television, and social media, it would seem smoking suddenly signifies style, sex appeal, and power. I find this fascinating, and I had begun to notice this probably within the last year or so as I was watching films and movies, and I noticed more and more people smoking because we have all come through an entire era where there was smoking in bars and restaurants and airplanes, and then that all went away because we were educated and we learned what tobacco was doing to us and that it was in fact killing some of us, and so this all went away. But then I realized in looking at this that we have a whole generation that's now come up that didn't go through what we went through. They didn't learn what we learned. And so this is why some people are kind of finding it sexy in a way.
Well, it's interesting because sitting in the materialist screening, and when I see Dakota Johnson as the main character light up, my mind is like, what's happening here? Because it's set in these times. You know, if you have a set piece,
I think that's an important distinction. Yes.
You know, then you think, okay, well, that seems right.
They did smoke back then,
right?
Like
exactly,
Mad Men.
Exactly. But I also live in the People's Republic of Cambridge, and you know, just you think you're going to smoke, you'll be set out on the street.
Oh, that is
you don't even have to smoke.
That
just think about you're doing it. So it's really shocking to me to see this. The other point I want to make is that Dr. Jay Winston of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health in 2007 joined with Johns Hopkins and a lot of other medical institutions to meet with Hollywood studio heads about taking out these images from films. And it was very effective, what they did. There was a media arm to the public health nature of this. Dr. Winston was very much involved with this, and pretty much that's why you didn't see it. That the folks who were in charge then said, oh, we get it. They showed the statistics and how harmful it was, particularly to young people. So that hasn't happened again. They need a re-up to go remind them, hey, this is what's happening. And just here's a statistic for you. At the time that they went to meet with those, 66% of the top grossing 50 films had heavy smoking in it at that time. So that's what they were working against at that moment.
Okay.
And 9 of the top 10 Oscar films from this year had smoking.
I was going to say, it may be ticking back up a little bit, but here's the thing. Like, I don't think it ever really went away as much as it seems like it went away. This is sort of my take on it. Now, I will say out loud, I think I'm probably the only former heavy smoker among the staff here. So maybe I'm tuned into it in a different way as somebody who was once a smoker. But I was thinking about it. Carrie Bradshaw smoked on Sex and the City. That wasn't that long ago. ER character smoked. Jesse Pinkman on Breaking Bad smoked. There was the whole thing in House of Cards where they would get together at the window and share a cigarette. Like, all of that was not that long ago. Like, so I think the idea that it's kind of like making a comeback right now, I don't know. Maybe it's ticking back up a little bit. But the thing is, like, that idea, like, listen, smoking is bad. Smoking is bad for you. It is not a good thing to do.
Kids, if you're listening.
Yeah, seriously. But it is also, like, I think it has always, to a certain extent, been cool in a certain way. Like, it is a way to signal cool in the way that dangerous things are cool, in the way that drugs, sex, and rock and roll is cool. It's just always been part and parcel of it, and I don't think that's ever gone away.
See, I do disagree with you because I feel like I haven't seen nearly as much of it, so that when I started to see it again, I did notice it. And I agree with you. And this is why they met with Hollywood, because who doesn't want to look like Lauren Bacall or Robin Wright in House of Cards?
For that matter, Dakota Johnson.
Right, and now it's being Dakota Johnson. Now it's being spread by social media, which is the other factor, which never existed before. So you have all of these people picking up on this and replicating it, and even more, from what I'm reading anyway, I haven't talked to anybody who's doing this, that in addition to looking sexy or cool or however you want to describe it, they're also talking about just having the agency to do this. I'm making this decision to do this because I want to, and I'm going to. And that's what part of this is as well. And again, I just keep thinking, you don't have the background of what we have. We saw all those ads,
and all the people
all
dying.
the horrible pictures.
Oh, yeah.
All the lung
and all the
stuff.
other,
And
that
is
so
all
effective.
still true. Another thing I will say is this, I think that there's a piece that I think it was in the New York Times this week that was kind of talking about this trend, and it's in music, and I think their thesis a little bit was that it's kind of coming back as something that's sexy, but it's also like a power move, like saying a little bit like what Jared was saying here, like it's like I have agency, I have power, I can do what I want. I will say I think they're missing why it might have a little bit of cachet again in a way it didn't. I think the reason is that I think people know that smoking will harm them, but it is something where the after effects come down the road. And I think what it signals to me is people not being optimistic right now about their own personal future, right? The idea that, like, well, it's going to get me in 25 years, but we might not be here in 25 years, so light them up.
Yeah.
I think that's real. I think that feeling is real right now.
But back to the agency thing and the social media thing, marrying together, and the music thing, there's Charlie XCX. I mean, she's one of the leading proponents of this, like, don't tell me, and look how good I look, and, you know, I'm making a decision for myself.
But we can't smell you.
But yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it also, they do smell bad.
Yes.
I mean, when they're lit, they smell kind of good, I think. But afterwards, it smells bad.
Sorry, I interrupted.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Fine. Oh, well, I mean, I just think that we need some more ads from young people who have discovered early on, to your point. Because if you think it's down the line, it actually isn't.
No.
Because now we have, at the time when Dr. Jay Winston was going out to do this, they had amassed some stats, but they know way more now, and it's faster, and those consequences are even worse than you imagine.
Yeah, but we haven't even touched on vaping, which is also everywhere. You know what I mean? So, like, you know, we could say smoking, quote unquote, like maybe became less cool, but people are vaping everywhere
because they think it's less harmful.
I know, but it's not.
It's not.
I just had this realization that we're those people. We're those people. We're no longer the kids anymore. We're the people telling the kids what to do.
I guess so.
That's what happens.
That was an
well,
awful
don't smoke
moment.
around long enough.
Yes, exactly. Well, next, Misty Copeland, the pioneering ballerina who broke barriers as the first black principal dancer at American Ballet Theater, is hanging up her ballet shoes. This is huge. She's only doing this because she's 42 years old. She's a mom. COVID hit the dance world hard, but we know that dancers don't have an incredibly long life, although 42 is a long time to be on the stage. But she is somebody who was so extraordinary in what she did on the stage. Also for her story as a black girl coming to dance at age 13 because she grew up in a situation that was very difficult, often a homeless situation, but went into dance and then prevailed and became, as we said, this legend in dance. I had the opportunity to speak with her in 2017 on Open Studio, and here's what she said about her groundbreaking accomplishments.
A lot of people don't know a lot about the classical ballet world, so they kind of gotten away with, ABT, 77 years now in existence, and I'm the first black woman to reach this position of principal dancer. I feel like my mission has been just kind of bringing that to light, bringing that to the forefront of, pop culture and beyond the ballet world, because I feel like so many young people could benefit from being a part of an art form like this if they can only see themselves represented.
She did change so much because they did see it.
Yes, they did. And And getting to know her story in the many ways, I think about Prince, who just called her up and said, I'm going to do a song and I want you to dance. And she said, well, what kind of dance? What am I supposed to do? He said, nah, we'll figure it out. But his whole point was just to expose her to more people.
Prince is so cool. Like, there's so many stories of like, and then Prince just called up and was like, how about this idea?
Which, by the way, when he called up, she's like, yeah, this is Prince, right? And it's like, no, this really is Prince. So, I mean, I just think about that. Then she's written 2 or 3 books, you know, her memoir, then a kid's book, and all the work she's doing with her foundation. I am taken with the fact that she said she would just like to kind of disappear. She thought at the end of, I've done my job, I'm going to disappear. And then she realizes that part of the legacy is that she can't disappear because she's representing all the stories of those people who came before her, the few who were there, who did disappear, and she brought them back to life.
Yeah.
So she can. And I just love her for that.
And
so,
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens from here,
that's
right? Because as you said, like author, she was a subject of a documentary. She's got like, you know, what they call crossover appeal, right?
Yes.
Doing something with Prince. She did that bit on Kimmel,
Yes.
which was really funny. Like so, you know. Oh, by the way, it's kind of interesting. In 2019, one of the things she did was dance in Twyla Tharp's Deuce Coupe, which is a ballet to the music of the Beach Boys. I was thinking about that sort of full circle there or whatever. Yes. But I'm also interested, Callie, and Callie and I were talking before the show. She's got this farewell.
Okay, fine. I was stuck on the T. I was late. I get it. That's twice you've mentioned it now.
Before the show. She's got this October 22nd. Is it farewell? She's going to do this farewell thing. And I was saying, I feel like maybe there's some plan out there, but this feels to me like one of those things where they should figure out a way to simulcast this in like theaters across the country, because that is something I'm not going to be able to go to New York to any kind of farewell thing for this, right? And I couldn't afford to if I wanted to.
Well,
Callie
I would
was
go, but
prices.
the ticket prices are $5,000.
Yeah. But that feels like an opportunity to broadcast that performance live in like movie theaters or something like that. I think that is something I would go to that.
I would go to that too.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say about her is, note that I said I spoke to her in 2017, so she's been talking about her story for a long time and not filtering her story for a long time, because the reason I was talking to her was a book that she had written and produced about the body. And she talked a lot about how she was marginalized, basically being told that because you have the body of a black woman, you don't have the body of a dancer.
Right.
You can't possibly achieve what other dancers achieve with your body. And that damaged her quite a bit. It affected how she ate. It affected how she thought about her future. It affected what she thought about herself. And she has been talking about this for a very, very long time. That is also important for other people to hear. And while she has broken ground, that ground subsequently hasn't been followed by a lot of people, including at American Ballet Theater. So this is a very significant moment. And I'm not sure she always had the easiest path up until this moment, even though there's lots of coverage about what she's doing. So it is extraordinary. I also want to mention, Callie, you said that there were people before her too, and their stories are unheralded, but people can go back and read The Swans of Harlem by Karen Valby. We also had her on the Culture Show, so you can listen to our podcast and learn about the Black Swans of Harlem, who were these great dancers who definitely were forgotten for the most part until a lot of their stories have been revived in recent years. But she is an extraordinary person.
And just like it is sort of your classic American dream story too, right? She said, I think when she became a principal ballet dancer, you know, I've been working for this since I was 13 years old. Like the like hard work, dedication, singular focus, and like belief in yourself. Like that is that is what we like to put out as the American mythology. And she did it. She did it.
She had some great mentors. I highly recommend her memoir. It's really quite interesting. Yeah.
Well, coming up, death by 1,000 budget cuts. What is the financial future of public media? That's next on The Culture Show. We'll try to find some answers. Stay with us.
In Britain, knife crime has almost doubled in the past decade. Now experts, survivors, and lawmakers are gathering for a conference in London aimed at tackling the root causes and consequences of this kind of violence. I'm Carolyn Beelayer. We'll have that story and the day's top global headlines next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate in Cohasset, a sponsor of the South Shore Arts Center's 70th Annual Arts Festival on the Common, June 13th through 15th. Learn more at deanandhamilton.com. And the Omni Boston Hotel at the Seaport, presenting the Jazz Lounge at Kestra music series, a series of weekly performances highlighting jazz throughout the city of Boston. More at kestrarestaurant.com. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
From your community and across the Commonwealth, GBH News is your home for trusted local news. GBH 89.7, online at gbhnews.org, and on the GBH News YouTube channel.
I'm Jared Bowen. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. It's Friday, which can only mean one thing.
It's time for Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday.
That's right, it's Follow-Up Friday. We have some updates on the stories we've been tracking, starting in France. Soon it'll cost beaucoup bucks, or rather euros, to visit the Mona Lisa. Starting next year, the Louvre is raising ticket prices for non-EU visitors. So just to back up a little bit, we had talked about the Louvre is trying to figure out, first of all, where to put her. It looks like they're going to put her in the basement. They're going to give her her own experience.
It's a very nice, it's a finished basement.
It's a finished basement.
Yes,
track lighting and everything.
Yeah.
And a pool table.
And a bar.
And
Right. Wet bar.
But apparently to move her and do all the refurbishments they need to do for the Louvre and at Versailles, and they're looking at other places down the road, they are going to increase the price for non-European visitors. It'll go up to about 30 euros, up from 22 euros.
So what they figured out is we can make bucks off of this that can benefit all of the other artistic institutions. There is a lot of criticism about charging one group of people versus another. In this case, this is EU people, so that would be us. But somebody else made the comparison. What are you going to do? Charge Iraqis more than Africans or whatever? That just seems discriminatory and egregious. And that's on the table. But the folks who are backing this say, we got cracked pools, we've got overgrown gardens for all of these artistic treasures, and we could use that money to repair it. So there they are.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like to me, I think about this. It's sort of like, there's the thing you always hear, or you think about, or you talk about. It's like, here in America, it's like it's so expensive to do this or that or the other thing. But in Europe, they really fund the arts, and in Europe, they really get the trains work well, right? And true, but this is also a signal that they're struggling with funding there too.
Right.
Where else but France would you think that they were swimming in enough money to do what they need to do to keep their stuff funded? But they're not. They are also trying to figure it out. And I think the other thing is, an American, first of all, I still think that the price seems kind of reasonable. I'm like, I don't know, the $35 American is what it's going to cost to go to the Louvre. That seems pretty good. It's like $16 for a piece of pizza at Fenway. You know what I mean? Like, okay, and you get to go into the Louvre, so that doesn't seem that bad. And I think I'm also maybe this is an American thing. I'm used to this sort of. It's like a membership price versus a public price. It's like tiered pricing, and you could look at it and saying, like, it's kind of like if the city of Boston were going to say, like, if you live in the city of Boston, you get a discount rate for a museum or something. I'd be like, well, that makes sense. I could see that. That's kind of what they're doing, right?
Yeah, they're putting on a tariff.
They called it a tariff.
They called it a differential tariff.
Yeah.
This also the arts too. This acknowledges that the Mona Lisa is a cash cow.
Yeah, this is true.
Yes. Yeah.
Pay the differential tariff and buy the T-shirt all at the same time. Well, back in the U.S., a Luigi Mangione musical premieres tonight in San Francisco. Tickets for all performances are sold out, and they have been for quite some time now. And according to the theater's website, more performances are coming soon. So we had talked about this on the Culture Show, and the fact that Luigi Mangione is facing charges for first-degree manslaughter, and yet there was this whole movement around him, people selling things on Etsy and eBay, putting him on T-shirts, and now we have this musical, but the creators of the musical are saying this is looking at basically this cult of personality and how it exists in this country.
Well, it's only an hour, so that kind of makes me nervous, It's all sold out, and I would argue that the people who bought the tickets are not going for the deep cultural exchange. I just don't believe they are. Having said that, I will say, when they first said we're going to turn The Color Purple into a musical, I said, this is a travesty. That content cannot be turned into a musical, and it was. And if anything, it boosted the emotionality and the themes of the book and the play. So, not the movie, by the way. The movie is terrible. But the play on Broadway, the musical on Broadway, very, very good. So, I don't know. Maybe, possibly.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you, Callie.
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical on this. I mean, look, you got see what it is. But there, doing satire and doing comedy in this kind of a manner, I think can often be done poorly. There's plenty of examples of it being done poorly. But maybe they thread the needle, and maybe there really is some insight here or whatever. Diddy and Sam Bankman-Fried are apparently also characters in it because they're in the same jail.
Which, by the way, I didn't realize
I didn't realize that either. So actually, it's doing its job already.
Yeah.
We're learning things.
Right.
So good job them.
Don't you all remember when Mangione went in and Sean Diddy Combs complained? There was too much. Yeah, too much.
Just another
public.
famous person
Yeah,
there,
he was like,
or-
what's going on here? This guy's getting a lot of attention. Y'all don't remember that?
No.
That actually happened.
I guess we all need to book a flight to San Francisco, or Edgar and I at least need to book a flight to San Francisco so we can catch up. No, I have to say, because I saw Jerry Springer the Opera, which I think might be comparable, which looked at our American society and how we construct culture, and what that show, which was so trashy, did for culture, and did to culture, I guess is the better way to phrase it. I think I'm very intrigued to see how this is dealt with, because I bet it's going to be pretty fascinating, and it's probably more in line with what we talked about on this show. Why all of this mania for somebody who's accused of murder?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the idea of like the singular kind of outlaw who has a different sense of justice that the law has not really. The
Also,
law
he's
hasn't.
good-looking.
Well, no, for
That's
sure.
a huge part of it.
But that is a. I mean, that is an
Yeah.
American trope for as long as there has been America, right?
Right.
Like this guy who yes, it was wrong to murder someone, but he did it for a greater good or for a greater justice. I mean, that's classic America right there. So.
Well, in Washington yesterday, the House narrowly approved legislation to claw back 2 years of federal funding for public media outlets. That's $1.1 billion that had already been approved for PBS and NPR over the next 2 years. We'll talk a little bit about Washington here. I think I think I can speak for the three of us, although you guys didn't reach out to me when I was stuck on the train and you were having all your fun meetings and music listening sessions. But I think it's uncomfortable for us to talk about this just because we want to remain objective as we talk about it. But these are huge cuts that are facing public media. There have been cuts going all the way back, or threats of cuts going all the way back to Nixon. But there is movement on this one. So next steps are it goes to the Senate, and that has to be voted on by mid-July. Otherwise, this would end. But it'll now be up to the Senate to decide whether or not the funding should be pulled back. This is funding that was already allotted to PBS and NPR so that it could be immune to partisan efforts.
And I think it should be said it's a simple majority vote in the Senate. So
Right.
this is one of those Senate votes where it's simple majority would pass this.
And I think it should be said that the simple majority was in our favor at one moment during the voting yesterday, and then two House members were persuaded by Mike Johnson, the Speaker, to change their votes. So we might not have been in this position. But I do think it's you can't emphasize enough, this was money that Congress already approved, and that when Doge came in and then said they cut the funds, I'm still not clear how Doge, in doing that, is not an illegal action because it did not have the authority that Congress had. Congress could at any time have said, we're going to have another look at this, but they hadn't.
Well, now they are, though. So
I know,
Doge
it's
ends up
sponsored by Doge.
Doge
So
ends up sort of being the ones who suggested. I will say, if that I think it's safe and fair to say, since we work in public broadcasting, I would not like to see funding go away for public broadcasting. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that this is going through the process of a vote in Congress in order to do it, I think is at least the right. If you're going to do it, that's the way it has to be done.
That's right.
What really has troubled me about what's going on is the idea that a lot of this stuff is happening by fiat, and that the executive branch is saying, overstepping, or maybe allegedly overstepping their authority, or it seems like overstepping their authority in doing some of this stuff, and Doge was doing the same thing. So at least it is very clear that Congress has the right to rescind this funding if they want to, and they're going through a vote to do it. So I hope it doesn't happen, but at least it's happening in a clearly lawful way.
Well, and also, and this is where I thought you were headed, because that's a great point as well, that this is also an existential moment for public media.
It is.
So it's an opportunity to explain itself and its purpose and defend its purpose, and there's also a mandate for it to do so right now as well. We see all the arguments that there's such a proliferation of media right now that you don't need NPR and PBS anymore because you can find this information anywhere. Public media counter as well. In a lot of parts of the country, that is not the case, and rural areas will be affected. We can point out with the Culture Show. There is no other show like this in Boston,
that's right.
so this is something that public media does.
Right.
And not that other many parts of the country, but this, I to some degree, I do see value in it, as stressful as it is for all parties involved, including, yes, admittedly us, that it's a time to have this conversation.
It's also a time for people to understand how their government works, because this is a situation where a few votes make a difference.
That's right.
Well, moving on to a portrait encouraged. 2 weeks ago, President Trump announced he was firing Kim Sayat, the director of the National Portrait Gallery. As we told you last week, she kept on working. And this week, the Smithsonian's Board of Regents said she will keep working because it's Secretary Lonnie Bunch who makes personnel decisions, not the president. So when we last left off, we had broken into the show a couple of weeks ago to say that he had fired her.
Right.
We talked about last week, as I said, that she was remaining on the job, pointing out that the Board of Regents, of which the Vice President is part, but this still is a bipartisan board, has said that no, the President does not have this power, and they're not allowing him to have the power.
Right, because they're going to court. So we'll see how this ends up, but that's the stand they're taking at this moment.
There are systems and processes in place, so let's follow the system and the process.
And the final thing that we'll just mention that we've been talking about too is the Kennedy Center Gala happened this week. The president attended, as he was very eager to do, because there was a performance of Les Mis, a musical he really, really loves. That gala,
Because it was a New York late 80s thing. That's what he loves.
That gala did happen, and the president was met with boos, cheers, and some F-bombs, not to mention a group of drag performers who greeted him in the lobby as the Kennedy Center Gala was getting underway. So this continues to unfold, and the president saw all manner of reaction.
Yes, and
and that's that.
We are moving on to our lightning round. Sometimes I'm not even in charge of the show, apparently. So these are the headlines that caught our attention this week. Callie, what's yours?
I am so enthused that today The Materialists open, and that's the movie with Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal, and Dakota Johnson. It's been described as a rom-com. It is not. It's a romantic
what is
drama. You know, rom-com by its name says romance and comedy. There is not a laugh.
It's a rom-mama?
Yeah, something like that. There's not a laugh in this thing, but it is beautifully done, and it's a love story, and it has
lots of smoking.
Lots of smoking, sadly, but you have Celine Song, who wrote this and directed it, and there's, as some reviews said, there's not a word wasted. She really knows how to get that dialogue going. And I'm telling you, there'll be some classic lines that'll come out of this that we'll be repeating to each other. It's really beautifully done.
Nice.
Maybe we can watch it on the plane on the way to San Francisco, Edgar.
Yeah, you and I, and Callie, Jared and I watched it before the show.
Okay. Ha ha ha.
Your turn, Edgar.
Oh, my turn.
That's how
yes.
this works.
Right. So what caught my eye is on Saturday, there was the 4th annual Pencil Sharpening Festival in Minneapolis. Now, this is not just any pencil. This is fantastic. This is a couple years ago, a couple in Minneapolis, this huge old oak tree in their yard got damaged in a storm, and they said, well, we want to turn it into a sculpture, and they kind of took a look at it, and they were like, we didn't want to just do like a bear in the woods kind of thing. They said, it kind of looks like a pencil, so they got an artist to make it into a giant number 2 pencil, which they have painted like a giant number 2 pencil, this old oak tree in their backyard. And what they have done every year since is gather people from all over to come for their annual sharpening of the pencil. So they have this giant sharpener, and they're literally sharpening it. So every year it will come down a little bit more. So it's ephemeral over time. Yeah. It will come down to the nub. But this has been picking up steam, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people this year. We were just talking about Prince, who's a Minneapolis guy. The owners handed out these purple pencils in honor of him. It would have been his 67th birthday, I think. So very cool thing, and I think we should definitely go there next year.
Love that.
I would love to go to this
that.
festival.
Me
It seems
too.
great.
So eventually they'll be able to fill out their SAT tests.
As if it still happens like that, Jared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, mine is the end of an era here in Boston. The Blue Man Group announced this week that it is ending.
Wow.
So it has been here since 1995 at the Charles Playhouse. They didn't give a reason, but they said they're only going to be open through July 6, 2025. Wow. So just a few more weeks to go see Blue Man Group if you never
big deal.
have. This is a huge deal. They have been in residence at the Charles Playhouse forever. Of course, it was such a huge deal when this show opened because it was so different. You got these blue men doing all of these things, all that plus Twinkies.
Yeah.
Well, it's everything, I guess, has to end at some time.
Will they never come back? Or
so they're pointing people to Vegas and Orlando, where they still have shows.
Classic place to retire, Vegas,
Yeah.
right? Just go out and do a residency.
And they're also going to be having a forthcoming tour as well. Well, that is all for this edition of The Culture Show. Thank you for listening to the show. Tune in Monday for Frederick Douglass, the opera. Singer Kenneth Kellogg and conductor Gil Rose join me in our Fraser studio with a preview, including 2 performances. Callie, what's coming up on Under the Radar?
Oh, we're doing such a fun episode. We're deconstructing John Williams' score for Jaws, who Spielberg himself has said it's 50% that made the movie. And it's fabulous with 2 great music professors. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Awesome.
And what's coming up on the Curiosity
Well,
Desk?
keep your eyes open on Channel 2 and 44. In the week after next, we've got a special about the molasses flood here in Boston, which is going to air on TV. Half-hour version of the Curiosity Desk. So keep your eyes open for that.
Do you deal with the fact that people say you can still smell that molasses in the
We,
north
in
end?
fact, do look into that. We have people smell things as part of the show. So.
I can't wait to
Check it
watch.
out.
Thanks today to engineer Bill Piacciatelli, the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lally, and Olivia Corshio. Also thanks to the Lenox Hotel, the Newsfeed Cafe. Thank you to everyone who came down to be here with us at the library today. Lots of Red Sox caps. We love seeing you all here. Thank you so much. I'm Jared Bowen. Don't let Daddy take the T-Bird away. Get on the road and have an art-filled weekend.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library.
GBA